All right, so looks like I'm live, and as per usual, I'm going to share this link on Facebook right now so we can get some more people up in this live chat. Let's see. I think that's posted. Okay, so that is posted, and I'm in my usual spot drinking 80s tea as well, and burning up some incense. So basically, in this, in this live stream, I'm going to talk a little bit about the new teas and some other new products that I have pretty close, ready to go. I have the actual teas in my possession as we speak. I'm actually just waiting on bags and labels. It turned out the bags that I ordered were too big. So I needed to get some that were a bit more appropriate for what I was actually trying to do. So I'm just waiting on bags and labels. But I have already shipped out some orders to people that I'd already been talking to on like Facebook or via email. People that were very eager to get the teas. So I just went ahead and shipped it out and sort of did a makeshift label and used the bags that I was laying around, but it's not because, you know, why not? And it's also just gave me an opportunity to get more feedback from people and to get more people to experience the things that I had experienced and see the reasons why I even chose to start selling these teas. I think there was a question about, do you keep drinking the same teas you will sell? Yeah, actually, for sure. Like the tea that I have in this bag right here. Yeah, if you email me, I'll hook you up early because I have everything. I just, it won't be like aesthetically exactly where I want because I have smaller bags and a label that fits the bags on the way. But yeah, if you want to email the teas ahead of time, send me an email and I'll get them together and get it shipped out within a day or so. Because I've already, like I said, been shipping some out. But yeah, all the teas that I drink are pretty much the ones that I sell. There's some that are kind of too expensive to sell. Like, for example, this tocha that I'm holding, usually is in the market, this would sell for like $500-600. So it's a bit it's a bit more pricey than I think people are generally going to want to pay. So, but I drink that all the time myself. But the vast majority of, like, my favorite tea lately has been this aged 90s Shung Pu'er cake, and the tea is spectacular. This is a bit what I have left in my personal stash, but I drink that on the regular, and I'm probably about to drink it up now because this one's getting a little bit washed out. So I'm gonna start off with 3 teas, and I think I actually have one over here somewhere. Let me just grab it. Oh, here it is. So I'm gonna have 3 teas. This is one of them. This is, I'll show you what it is. This is basically a 100-gram tocha, which is just shy of 4 ounces. It's a early 90s shopware made from mostly small leaves and tips and buds. So it's pretty high quality leaf material. But I'm gonna sell this 100-gram tocha for like 40, 45, something like that. And this tea is really, really good. Brews up really dark, brews for a very long time, and it's really nice. So that's the first one. The second one is gonna be this 90s Shung, which I held up earlier. I think that'll be like 40 an ounce, which let's say other websites that are selling that tea, it's 5 times that price, if not more. But because I'm not playing on the name brand, because it's a 90s Shung from a very famous cake, from a very famous recipe. So if you tell people that's what it is, then generally you have to charge a lot more. But I'm not doing that because I honestly don't care about appealing to like tea people or like tea dorks who like, oh, this is this recipe cake from this. I'm like, I'm interested in the correct qualities. of the tea. But this is the one that I'm calling 90s sinking shung because it's really relaxing, has this like muscle loosening, relaxing quality, and it has like a sedative quality as well. The first few times that I was drinking it with friends, we would have these just waves of just giggling and laughing and kind of geeking out a little bit, and then and then that quickly turned into each of us kind of leaning back and getting much more quiet and introspective and kind of sedated, which is kind of not what you'd really expect from a tea. People think pour, they think aged, or they think caffeinated, they think energized, they think stimulated, or they have like these very earthy, like dirty type flavors that come to mind, and all of those are kind of incorrect. So that's the second tea. The third one is also, it's going to be a loose aged 80s shung that is like super delicious, very relaxing, sinking qualities, and that's probably going to be like $20 an ounce, which for the level of quality of tea is an insane price. And I just wish when I was getting into tea, and especially getting into tea of this caliber, that it really would have been accessible price-wise and accessible in terms of actually finding it, but it really isn't, because I've spent years trying basically everything that's available online at every price point, and very few things, if any, actually meet the bill. Or if they do actually meet the bill and have the quality, then they're like $5,000 a cake or something outrageous, but it's a little bit outside of my budget for a daily drink. So kind of my goal is making things that are really high quality actually accessible and somewhat out there. So I may actually end up turning this tea thing into its own brand and basically really growing it out and turning it into something special and making these caliber of teas accessible over a really long period of time and making it a sister brand to Hyperion Herbs. And perhaps even eventually turning into more of like a lifestyle type brand, because I think there's a lot of value in, number one, enjoying high quality tea, but number two, like actually getting good teaware and sitting around for an hour or two with friends or family or people you're close to and just chilling out and enjoying tea. Especially for people who maybe don't drink or like who don't smoke weed or do these types of popular social activities. You kind of still need something communally to bring people together, or something that you can enjoy and socialize and commune over. And I think tea is a great ritual, a great ceremony, not really ceremony, but just a great sort of routine that can be done individually and with people as a way of coming together. So I think as a lifestyle thing, it's a very important thing to add in. The other point that I'll make is I feel somewhat a little bit degree of trepidation or hesitance for sharing these teas and some of the other follow-up products that I'll talk about, because people sometimes are missing context. Meaning I'm almost tempted to start like a lower level, almost like shitty tea brand. And just saying like, look, before you buy these good things, you need to buy this garbage so that you can understand like what you're getting and what it actually is and what it actually means. Because with these things, if you haven't done the research or really cultivated your sensibility or your palate, or your ability to ascertain quality, then some things will really be lost. So sometimes buying expensive stuff is almost like a waste. And that's a similar idea for why I had to pull the plug on the inner door herbs with all the ginseng and the spirit reishi and stuff, because it was just making too high quality of things available to too many people. And there are definitely a lot of people that get it and appreciate it and have reverence and gratitude for it. And then there were a lot of people who it was just a commodity. They're like, oh, I heard that's good and I have the money, so I'm going to buy it. And it's like, culturally and historically speaking, these things are often far more valuable than money and of verging on something spiritual or transcendental. So it's kind of a weird thing. So for those reasons, I feel a little bit hesitant, a little bit of trepidation in terms of making these things available. Because for one, I don't want them to go to waste, meaning if someone buys it, forgets about it, puts it aside, or maybe they just don't get it. It's like, oh, this is not good. It's like, no, I'd much rather like I have it personally, or I know it's with people, or like my friends who actually will get it and understand it and value it for what it is. But also, at a certain point, you just kind of have to trust that it's going to get into the right hands and that people will appreciate it. So, but that leads me to the next aspect of new products that I'll be adding to. It's all probably going to go on the Inner Door Herbs website. I'll probably build that out as a separate brand, just because it's kind of related to tonic herbs and health and stuff, but it's also kind of its own different left turn, its own different niche, and it's kind of takes a lot more, investment in a lot of ways to really get educated and be able to develop the ability to appreciate. But basically, I'm going to have the teas. I'm going to start off with just 3, and then I'll eventually build that out, and I'll have some teaware and things of that nature. And then the next thing that I'll have after that is a few things that I've been working pretty hard on and pretty grateful to share, which is what I'm holding right here, which if you just listen to this. Hold on, let me get a good one. Yeah, that was a good one. So what I'm holding here is basically high grade, handmade, pure sandalwood incense, meaning no fillers, no binders, no additives, no nothing. It's just pure, straight up sandalwood. And it's some of the best incense I've ever come across. And I've been searching for quite a long time. And I've spent a lot of money on various types of incense. And the other one is high-grade Agarwood incense, which again, you can see here, handmade, pure, no additives, no fillers, no binders, no nothing, just pure incense. So these are just so awesome, invaluable, and just such an awesome thing to add into your life. Like, honestly, these types of things make me very almost emotional in a way, very sentimental. Like, legit, the other day I almost cried. I shit you not. When I got the incense and this oil, I smelled it, was like, I almost felt moved to tears. And even still, just smelling myself. It's a wonderful thing. Looks like there was a question. Let me see. Excited for the teas. Will you have an aged pour? Yeah, I was just talking about the 3 aged pour teas that I'll have. And I have them already. I'm just waiting on the bags and labels and to put them on the website. But if you want to order ahead of time, you can just send me an email and I'll send you more information. You can order and I'll get those shipped out to you. I've already been shipping out a few orders for people who had been like really, really, really asking me about it and following up with me a lot. So just send me an email and I can send you more info and get those out to you if you're so inclined. So the new teas, and then I'm gonna have a high grade Mysore sandalwood, high grade Agarwood, and they come with these dope ass cases. Like, it's just awesome. And for these incense, like, you don't need a whole stick. Like, in my living room, if I want to resonate this living room, I need like that much of a stick. Like, really not very much. And it will set the tone and really fill the space. And what I think is important to point out about the incense is it's sometimes like high quality oolong, meaning the way we're usually accustomed to taste is like the first taste, you're looking for all the flavor. But actually, with a lot of higher quality teas, the flavor comes after you swallow it. The flavor comes in the echo and in the return. So with these incense, you can get a little bit of a key if you just sort of like waft in the smoke, but really it's about how it fills the space and how it will kind of be in the background. That's really the echo, or that capacity is really where the beauty of it is. It won't stain your room. It'll eventually dissipate, but it will resonate it. Meaning, like if I burn some before bed, when I wake up in the morning, I can still smell it a little bit, but then by midday or the next night, it's gone. It doesn't like stain it. And if you didn't know what it was, if you didn't know the smell, you weren't necessarily trained, you might not even really smell it, because unlike most incense, it's not smoky. It doesn't smell burnt or ashy. It's just this delicate sort of implied aroma that you could easily tune in or out. But if you want to really tune it in and actually have that capacity of your mind to go into it, there's a lot there. If you're caught up, or you're in your head, or you're distracted, or you're just not really present whatsoever, probably won't get much out of it. And that's kind of the aesthetic of Asian incense, specifically like for Japanese, they have kodo, which is like the art of listening to incense or listening to aromas, not smelling, but listening. So the listening quality is really quite important and a very useful skill to develop, to be able to basically like calm your mind, drop the mental anxiety, and be able to listen and hear and actually perceive. So the other thing that I'll be adding, there's a few more things, but I won't share all of it now, but the other thing that I'm like super stoked about and almost cried was this oil in particular. Now this is an Agarwood oil, and honestly I'd been buying Agarwood oils pretty obsessively for, I don't know, 8 months, something like that. And once I found this aroma profile, I knew that was it. And I'd been searching for a long time to be able to find it, because usually for this caliber of oil, you're looking at about at least $1,200 for this size bottle, at least, if not upwards of $5,000-$6,000, depending on the vendor. So obviously that's a bit steep. So it took me a long time to find an actual connection with an actual artisan, with the actual distiller, to be able to get the high grade, which if you actually watch it move, it's like, it moves kind of like honey and molasses. Like it's really thick and slimy. It's a little bit more warm now because it's been in my hands, it's been in my pocket. But if you just pick it up, it's usually very resistant to even move at first. But so this is also something that I'll most likely be offering, and I'll probably keep it kind of on the DL for a while. Like I've already sold a few bottles just from talking to people, because the aroma profile and the effects are basically the top of the pyramid in terms of what people look for Agarwood. So that will be available at some point. So that I'm pretty stoked to be offering those and to be able to basically share it, because these are things that I'm communicating with and using all day, every day, pretty much. I mean, like if I'm not wearing the oil when I'm out, I'll be heating some wood or burning some incense when I'm at home, just because it just feels so good to be kind of surrounded by it all the time. And it can clear your head, it can help you focus, it can help you actually be present, it can drive out depression and anxiety and these types of things. Like it has a pretty noticeable and strong effect on your mind. And honestly, I just went for a walk before I started this live stream, and I put on a couple swipes of this, and I was like smelling it, and I was like, oh, it's kind of faint. It's like not that strong, because I put on I was experimenting to see what happened if I did like a lot. Because usually I just do like one very small swipe, but I think this was like 2 or 3 fat ones. So I was like, oh, smells like it's nice. But then as soon as I walked outside, I was like, man, it's like really quiet. I could just hear Nothing except like a few little birds here and there, or someone's footsteps way off in the distance, or maybe my own footstep, or just, it was almost like I could hear a pin drop, to use that cliche. Meanwhile, I live in a very busy part of the city. There's a lot going on. There's construction. It's a very active, busy road, popular commercial district in a pretty busy neighborhood. But it was just, went outside, I was like, it's really quiet. And everything was very bright and very vibrant. And it was a very enjoyable walk, let's say. And it was just from the oil. And I've had experiences sometimes where I'm like, am I high, right? Like, am I tripping right now? Like, just the way my visual acuity was tuned in and the way my mind felt, it was just, my mind felt almost clear and empty. Where it was just like, it's not a lot in there. Like, my mind felt like the environment, if that makes sense. And, you know, these woods, agarwood, sandalwood, they have a long history and a long association with spiritual practices, or being used by people who are indeed trying to cultivate some aspect of their consciousness in a more refined and organized way. So after 6 or 8 months of using it regularly, I can conclusively say that those claims are indeed true, and that when you get into some of the higher quality stuff, especially like this oil, there is almost like this spiritual, otherworldly type dimension that you get into that is not found in some of the other oils. So that'll be cool and interesting to share, along with the incense and the teas. It's like it's honestly just something that's brought a lot of joy and value to my life, and I just want to share that with people and have them feel what I felt, and hopefully add some joy and value to their life as well. So that's kind of my own chat. That's pretty much all I got to say in terms of new products and stuff. Oh, actually, for Hyperion Herbs, reishi spore powder is being packaged right now, so I should have that on the website in a few weeks to be able to send out. And then I think after that I'll do like an astragalus extract, because I've had a lot of some requests for that, and I just think it's a pretty good herb. So I'll probably start selling that one too. And for now, I'm gonna get some more tea going on. So I'm gonna check the questions and see if there was any other questions that I didn't get. Oh yeah, how much per bottle? So this is not the bottle that I'll be selling. This is a 3 ml or 3 gram bottle. And what I'll be doing is a 2 gram bottle that has a different design. And I think it'll be like $200 for the 2 gram bottle, which is actually, I should charge more, to be honest, because of what it is, how insanely rare it is, especially the quality. But I think initially, to share it with people, the first run or so, I'll probably do like 200. That's oftentimes what I'll do with new products, is do kind of like a discounted way to just get it in some people's hands, get some feedback, see how people get on with it, and then settle into like a more comfortable retail price. But $200 for 2 ml of this oil is actually like a freaking steal. Which is why I almost cried when I got it. I was like, oh my God, finally. I've been searching for this for so long. And it's just an oil, it's just an aroma profile that just goes straight to my heart. Like, it's very noticeable, and it's very enjoyable, let's say. It just makes me happy, I mean, to be quite honest. Let's see if I missed any other questions. What is your take on SARMs? I don't know what that is, so if you can tell me what SARMs is, I might be able to have some familiarity, but just from that acronym alone, I don't have any clue what that even is or means. And I apologize for the moment if I seem distracted, because I'm getting some new tea going on, so I had to weigh it out, do some rinse, but I'm going to be drinking one of the teas that I'm selling. And actually, the tea that basically was the whole impetus for even doing the website. You used to sell Young Pu'er. Do you ever drink it now? Not really. I haven't had anything green in quite a while, to be honest. It just hasn't. It's also been wintertime for one, and young green teas tend to be a bit more cooling, more like of a summer type thing. So I basically haven't had any in a while. I can source good stuff in that category, and I did. I mean, I had that 2012 Old Tree stuff, and then I had the 2017 Gushu Cake, which those were nice, really nice teas. It's just I haven't really been that interested in it. And there's a lot more teas that there's a lot of other websites that have decent young pu'er. So for me, just for the sake of what I'm interested in and doing something slightly different, actually just doing aged teas, because not a lot of people have experienced actually good, high quality, clean aged tea that is actually what it should be. So that's part of the reason why I wanted to go in that direction, and it's just kind of what I've been into for quite a while. So the tea I'm brewing up now is the 90s Sinking Shung, the one that I talked about earlier. I think I'll do like 45 an ounce, and this is the one that has really nice sedative qualities, relaxing, sinking quality, hence why I called it Sinking Shung, because it will kind of make you want to sink, where you start drinking and then eventually you're just going to be leaning back and you just kind of probably want to lay down and chill out. Has a nice muscle relaxing quality. And actually one of my friends is a Chinese medicine practitioner, and he's been doing some classes where people will drink tea or drink various teas and work on taking pulse. So they'll actually take the pulse before, then they'll drink the tea, and they'll take the pulse quality afterwards to see how the tea actually affected their organ system. And this one definitely had a calming, had everything kind of calm down and balance out and get more in a harmonious range. For most people, there were a few people that it made them more wiry, but I suspect that was because they probably had not eaten and they were admittedly high-strung, kind of addicted to anxiety and stress types. So they're probably a bit resistant to anything that's going to chill them out anyways, which is kind of a weird thing, but that's how some people work. And then there's also people who just, for some reason, don't eat, which if you're going to not eat, then don't drink tea. Like, it will rip your stomach apart. It will hurt your digestion. Like, you need to have food. For some reason, people get on this no food diet or skipping a bunch of meals diet, but then try to take herbs or supplements or tea, and it's like, you can't necessarily be that surprised when it has a negative effect, especially with something like tea that can have such strong acids and these strong oils that can break things down. It's like, you need some food. So that's the one I'm brewing. It's a 90s Sinking Shung. The next, let's see, I steep astragalus root with gynostemma when I make tea. Is this effective, or would an extract be better? Gynostemma is something that gynostemma you can steep because it's just a leaf. Astragalus is a thick, dense, woody root, so you would want to do what's called a decoction on that, meaning you want to boil it in water for, 10, 15 minutes, something like that, and that will get you a lot more out of it. You might get a little something from it, just from a steep, but honestly, you want to decoct it and you'll get a lot more out of it. And that's fine. And then if the extract that I may sell will be, I think, a 10 or 12 to 1 concentrated extract. So that's gonna, of course, be a lot more potent and a lot more concentrated. But at the same time, it's a different cost or a different price point versus you can buy like half pound or however many ounces of raw astragalus root for very cheap versus I think I'll probably sell 4 ounces of powder for like, I don't know, $30, $35 or something, which actually if you break it down, it might actually be cheaper because how much you actually get per serving versus having to cook. That, and just sometimes there's a convenience of not having to cook something. You can just like mix it with hot water and you're done. That's kind of one way to do it. But yeah, things like astragalus or say like mushrooms, things that are more woody or fibrous, you need to do a decoction. Simple steeping usually won't be enough. But gynostemma is okay because it's just a leaf. Or like goji berries, you can steep, but you can also decoct because you can get more out of it. Kind of just depends. So let's see. The tea I'm making right now is the one that I was talking about, which is the one that the sinking 90 shung that I was saying had the relaxing sinking quality and had a balancing effect on people's pulses and is generally more of a sedative. Like even right now, I just did the first brew, which is not very dark, but there's already a nice thick layer of oils on top of the water or the tea, whatever. So the flavor profile of this tea has kind of 3 main things going for it, or about 4 right now. On this first initial brew, I'm getting a little bit of like, oh, this used to be a green sheng pu'er, meaning if you've ever had raw pu'er, like green fresh, it'll have this like floral, sweet honey quality. This one still has a little bit of that in the first part of it, the first, say, like 3 or 4 brews. But then it will have these camphor and ginseng / herbal / woody type flavors. So that's primarily what it'll have going on from a flavor standpoint. Which, to me, whenever I first drank this tea, I didn't really think it tasted that good. I was like, the flavor is okay, but the way it makes me feel is spectacular. Like even right now, I'm like starting to sweat. You can feel things starting to move and get a little bit more relaxed. But the more you get into it though, the more the camphor and the like ginseng woody aroma comes out. And when I mean wood and woody, a lot of times people will talk about this and use like the forest floor or like fall as like a way to describe it. And I think that's not good. It's kind of like dirty, earthy, like kind of gross, woody. Whereas this is, to me, is more like a clean, pristine Japanese forest. So it's like a very clean woodiness, a very crisp, sharp. And you don't really get any aged flavor. It's like very sweet. You can tell at one point it used to be a raw pour, but then you get the aged flavors coming in. But honestly, I think some of the other teas that I sell and will be selling actually taste better from like just a strictly flavor standpoint. But to me, flavor is kind of secondary when the actually chi quality or the body effect of this tea is just very very special and very unique. So that is really good. That's the 90s sinking sheng. Let me try to catch up on the questions that are coming in. What is your nutritional philosophy for maximizing both health and well-being? Or do you believe in a more balanced Chinese medicine energetic approach specifically to the constitution of each individual? I don't really, at this point in my life, worry or think about really any of those things. I just eat generally what makes me feel pretty good. And I think sometimes people focus too much on what specifically they're eating, which of course you have to within a certain spectrum, right? if you're just eating like actual food, meaning vegetables, fruits, mushrooms, nuts, seeds, animal products, fermented foods, some good grains, like things that are actually food, right? Not processed garbage, not super chemical laden or whatever. If you're actually eating within just good quality food, then you don't have to worry as much. Like, I was talking to a guy who's French, and we were talking about food, and he had this quote that he said was they had in France when he was growing up, which is basically something like, if the quality is there, then you just don't have to really worry about it. Or if the quality is good, then there's nothing to worry about. Something like that. So that's generally how I look at it. Like, I mean, I'll eat pizza sometimes. I'll eat burgers sometimes, which are allegedly are like not healthy or not healthy food. But honestly, I feel way better just eating more regularly and normally than I did when I was obsessed or fixated or, quote, healthier. So I think if you're just within a certain range, that's one important piece. The other important piece is actually not eating too much or not eating too little. Which if you eat way too much, then you're like tired and heavy and sluggish after meals. If you don't eat enough, then you're kind of are ungrounded and your blood gets weak. So from a Chinese medicine perspective, the point of eating food generally is to nourish and build your blood and build qi. And I don't mean qi in like a magical, mystical, the force type nonsense. I mean your simple day-to-day metabolic energy. Like for me, I notice if I go like a long period of time without eating or without moving, then I might actually start to feel kind of cold. But if I actually eat regularly and move regularly, I don't really feel cold. I don't really notice it doesn't really bother me. And I think that's true of a lot of people. A lot of people have really cold hands and feet for these reasons, and also probably they're locked up in their neck and shoulders or have carpal tunnel or some other thing that's a major blockage. So I don't really worry about it. I don't go deep into those things because I don't think in that way. My mind doesn't work in that way. I don't see the world or myself in those ways. So I just literally don't pay much attention. Just kind of eat food that's of good quality and keeps me feeling even, balanced, and stable. And that's really what your food should do. You have energy, you think clearly, you feel balanced, even, and stable. And you're not like, I'm tired and I'm hungry and I'm angry. I ate way too much, now I'm sleepy. Now I'm tired and I'm hungry. Now I'm grumpy, now I'm sleepy. Like, you just want to be even and stable. And this is something that people really overlook in a lot of arenas. Especially you like read new agey or self-help books or pop on social media, see people talking about emotional well-being or self-care and all these things. People are like all over extremes. They're all over into doing complex, heavy, very kind of self-flagellating type of things. But what about just being like even and stable and just kind of okay? Just simple, basic, boring, and then you just kind of can forget about it, move on with your life, and do some Maslow's hierarchy of need type stuff and focus on something more important. But I understand that that's a journey and a process. I'm just sharing my opinion and where I'm at right now. Let me see here. Hopefully that makes sense. Can you talk about your lion's mane versus other companies? Well, I mean, it just depends on what other companies or what specific things you want to know, but in particular, mine is grown on hardwood. It's made from organically grown fruiting bodies and is a concentrated hot water extract. So it's a hot water extract, but we use a different temperature than a lot of people use, and we use more pressure and a longer, different period of time, so we're able to extract out the oil and water soluble constituents. So hopefully that answers the question. I think it's really quite good. I've gotten a lot of good feedback on the lion's mane extract, and I think it's just a solid, awesome product. Let me see here. Oh, I also forgot about another tea that I'm going to sell, which is this 80s Liu Bao. Liu Bao is called Hei Cha, which basically means black tea, but it's another fermented aged tea, and is actually where they got the inspiration to create shou pu'er, which shou just kind of means cooked pu'er, right? So they got the cooking process from Liu Bao. But this Liu Bao will literally blow your mind in terms of the flavor and the effects, and it just brews forever. I got it last week, drank a few cups, texted all my friends, said this is the best Liu Bao I've ever had. And they're like, that's a big claim, I don't know if that's true. And then I was like, here's some, take it home, drink it, see what you think. And they're like, actually, yeah, you're right. It is incredible. Actually, my friend literally just texted me. It came up across the top of my screen and said, man, that Liu Bao is incredible. So there's that. Let me go back up and see if I can. What kind of tea could I use to heal nerves? I would just start with lion's mane, gynostemma, those two. Very easy, very supportive. Lion's mane, there's a lot of research, a lot of information on that with the nerves and the nervous system, so I would check there. Have you ever tried bale tea? Yeah, it's like bale fruit tea from Thailand, I think. I had it, I don't know, however many years, like 12 years ago. But I haven't, not really deep into it, and I didn't really pursue it as more than anything like a novelty, that because my friend had it at the time. So I'm not super familiar with it. Let's see. What would you do for creativity? I guess it depends on what you mean by creativity. Partially, I think what comes to mind is you have to actually set aside space and time for it and give yourself kind of the ability to do it. You need to put in the right information into your system, meaning if you want to produce this, you need to make sure the information you're putting in will lead to that. So like what I used to do, for example, when I played guitar, is I would be like, oh, I like what these people are doing. I want to create something kind of like this. So I would just listen to these people who have these common traits exclusively for, I don't know, a couple weeks or something. And then actually over time, when I would play guitar, it would start mirroring them. And it would start being like, oh, what I was doing was like kind of similar to what they were doing. Obviously not as good, but on that thread. So I was like, oh, this is a real useful principle here. Hence why people always talk about the importance of who you surround yourself with, the importance of your group, the importance of your environment, things like of that nature. Because the information you put in has a big effect on what comes out, because it shapes your mind in a specific way. So that's part of it, and having some idea for what you want to do, for what you're trying to do, and looking at for more of the feeling quality rather than the intellectual, mental abstraction of it. To me, things are usually more of a feeling, more of something I feel in my gut or my heart. That is where I might draw inspiration or creativity from, because I could talk about that feeling in a lot. I mean, it's kind of like a picture almost, right? A picture is worth 1,000 words. So if you have this clear picture inside, you can create about it or be open about it for quite a long time. And to me also just like taking walks, just take a walk and think and kind of just let your mind do its thing. And that's something that I've heard a lot of writers do. Maybe they'll wake up in the morning, like write, and then they'll go for a walk and kind of just reflect on and associate on what they've just done, and they'll get a new perspective. And then one funny story that George Carlin told once, because for some reason for quite a while people would associate George Carlin as kind of being like a stoner, a pothead, or things of that nature. And basically, Carlin did LSD and things just for a short period of time, I think like 60s, 70s. And after that, he didn't really do anything. But what he said he would do was he would write and create and do everything, and then basically take like 1 or 2 hits off of a joint and then reread what he had just done to see what it was like within that new perspective. And that was all he ever did. He didn't get he didn't get stoned. He wasn't a stoner. He wasn't a druggie. He wasn't any of those things. But that was just specifically how he used it, which is something I think it's a nuance and a detail that I don't think people really get sometimes with their unbridled idealistic enthusiasm for plant medicines. They don't understand dosage and like, for example, people talk about Terence McKenna and they're like, oh, he was an avid proponent of psychedelics and this and this and this. But if you actually listen to what he's saying, he really wasn't. He really wasn't advocating it for people, and he wasn't a chronic user. The only way he said he would do it is like high dose, like once or twice a year, because he would try to go in and get something big and then spend a lot of time to actually unpack it. And the guy was a freaking genius. I mean, he was highly intelligent, very boring also, not very charismatic past a certain point, and also almost sometimes too intelligent to where it takes a while to even penetrate and understand what he's saying. But even in the same way, he didn't use marijuana recreationally or casually or as a plant medicine. He would just smoke a bomber a couple times a year, and that was it. And I think people really miss the boat on that and don't understand the principles and the things behind it. I'm not advocating any of those things. I'm not saying you should do it, because I don't do any of those things and I don't feel the need to. But at 15, 20 years ago, it seemed like it made sense. So that's kind of what I would say about creativity. You just have to create space for it in many ways. Let's see. Do you drink tea before or after meals? How big are your meal portions? I usually have tea after I've eaten. I don't have tea on empty stomach generally. Usually I'll have breakfast in the morning, then I'll train for a few hours, then I'll have tea, then maybe lunch, train more, then more tea. So that's usually when I would have it. Like I'm having tea now, but I had lunch maybe an hour or like 90 minutes ago, something like that. So I have food in my stomach. How big are my meal portions? I have no idea. I don't really pay attention. I just kind of eat till I feel full or comfortable, but not too full and not uncomfortable. That's pretty much it. Let's see. Did you mention already what the poster behind you means? Nope, because I can't really speak about it in an intelligent or useful way. So I just kind of let it be back there and look cool. Is pu'er like gynostemma in that you can steep the same serving 2 or 3 times? If you have good pu'er, like this pot, I could probably steep 15, 20 times easily. That's why I recommend actually brewing in this way, because you can actually get the most out of it. If you just take it, steep it in like a tea mug or a tea ball for like 5 minutes, it's really kind of a waste, in my opinion. I don't really recommend that, because you're not going to get the journey. You're not going to get the full personality. You're just kind of going to get a big hit of it. So yeah, this tea's brew 15, 20 times easily. Let's see. Have you tried Damiana? What's your take? It's been many years. So nothing really comes to mind. It's personally not altogether that exciting, but I haven't used it in a long time. For me, if I had to choose between Damiana or Holy Basil and Gynostemma, I'd rather do those than Damiana. But I guess it depends on if you have a specific reason in mind. I'm not really up to date with Damiana, so I don't really remember exactly what its claims to fame are. So let's see. Which of your teas is best to lift mood? Weed tends to create paranoia. Any advice? I would say probably lay off the weed. That's like the biggest. I mean, I know it's not what you're asking, but it's like, if weed's causing paranoia, and you're looking for something to help with the paranoia, maybe remove the cause of the paranoia, and then you won't need anything to lift the paranoia. That's one thing. The other side of it is perhaps get a different strain, something that's much more clear. Get a different strain, lower the dosage significantly, or do like a really high CBD strain. Or actually, I've heard that if you have too much THC and you're getting paranoid, you can take straight CBD drops and it will mitigate the paranoia. I don't know, because I don't dip my toes in those waters, but that's what I would say. I see. What to use if you've quit weed but are still paranoid? Well, the bigger thing here, which I'll answer your question, but I'm going to explain the context, is that generally, for some people, weed never causes a problem. Actually, I'm not sure if that's true anymore, because the shit these days is insanely strong, especially if you live in a state where it's legal, where you can get stuff that's like 20 to 30% THC, or you can get insane concentrates, or BHO, or hash oils, or keefs, or crazy edibles. Like, you can just get crazy stuff, which, let's not kid ourselves, those things are not plant medicines. They're not tonic herbs. They're not sacred healing herbs. They're fucking drugs, like, straight up. Yes, they're better than pharmaceuticals if you have cancer or tumors or legitimate medical conditions and your options are cut, burn, poison, or cannabis. Then obviously cannabis is a far better solution, and people should be educated. They should have the option. It should be accessible. They should have the choice. It should not be illegal, because it can help a lot of people who genuinely really, really need it. But that does not mean it's like, oh, that means I can take it every day. That means I should do it all the time recreationally. That means it's a healing herbal substance, or it's for the healing of the nations, and it's totally safe because they mention it in the Bible, and Rastafarians use it as a sacrament, and Hindu sadhus use it as a sacrament, and it was, Jesus was the anointed one, and people think the anointed one meaning cannabis oil. Like, all these rationales that people use and try to justify it in a spiritual context, when in reality it's just a drug, and they're using it often for some escapism or from a relief from something. Which, again, I'm not saying is bad. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying we should probably keep our eyes open, be honest with what we're doing and why we're doing it, so that we can perceive the actual side effects that will arise, which leads me to why I actually started this whole thing in general, which is that certain people with really strong constitutions may not ever hit the paranoia, depleted, withdrawn, sort of very contracted stage of things. However, there are lots of other people who will hit that paranoia, fear, racing thoughts, absurd, unrelated thought streams and processes, very kind of disconnected, disjointed, ungrounded. They'll hit that thing a lot more quickly. Or perhaps it will take many years and will kind of creep up over time, and then all of a sudden, boom, the bottom just fell out and they're depleted and they don't understand why. But then they get into this gray area because they're like, it's a plant medicine, it's a spiritual sacrament, it's a healing thing. Why is this happening? Oh, I must be cleansing, I must be spiritually evolving, like whatever other things which aren't true. And the reason why, because this is depleting your kidneys and your liver from a sort of Chinese medicine perspective. And it's burning out your jing. It's just speeding it up and burning it up. Because you're getting these experiences or sensations from somewhere. There's no free ride. I mean, you're burning something to get that, regardless of where it comes from. So usually that's going to be people's kidneys and their liver. So the bottom will fall out of that, so then their sleep will get weird, the paranoia, the anxiety, the mental fogginess, and their mind will be consumed with completely irrelevant nonsense, which a lot of the hippie new age world or cannabis related world is just irrelevant nonsense that only makes sense to people with an equal or greater level of ungrounded disconnection. So it just is a very common thing that happens to not everyone, but to quite a lot of people that I've seen. So honestly, the good news is you can come back from it, you can repair, you can rebuild. The other side of it is that it just takes time, meaning you smoked weed for 3 to 5 years, so you're not just gonna like drink a few sips of like a thing and it's gonna go away. I mean, but maybe. And I can speak from personal experience because I've been through those things and I've gone deep down into those rabbit holes and damaged myself in many different ways. And I've seen lots of friends, and I live in a place where cannabis is legal, so I get to see how it's wrecking people in many ways. So I think definitely acupuncture, finding someone good locally to help get your organs able to communicate better and help get the gunk out and the phlegm and the damp. That's probably going to be a good thing. Herbally, something that comes to mind is like cordyceps or gynostemma or lion's mane, because just to help support the kidneys and the liver and give the body a little bit more energy and juice in those areas. But I would say those are definitely good places to start. Let me see. So bitter foods and teas. I mean, sure, yeah. I mean, including bitter food and stuff in your diet's always a good thing. Dandelion root, digestive bitters, these things. Marijuana completely caused a break from reality. I literally had an out-of-body experience, caused depersonalization for years. Fun fact, holy basil and other tonic herbs actually reverse that. Yeah, I mean, I agree that, those things can help, especially holy basil is kind of like a nervine. Something like lion's mane, cordyceps, gynostemma, those things can definitely help, as well as just getting rid of that stimulus. And then going to bed early, because this is another thing that happens once people's liver and kidneys get out of whack, is their sleep gets whack. They start staying up super late, which just creates a negative thing. So getting to bed before 11, eating 3 regular meals a day, exercising daily, putting those things in place with the herbs and removing that thing will probably really speed up the sort of rebalancing, bounce back process. But if you're not eating very well and you're keeping your blood sugar and your blood just all over the place, you're skipping meals, you're not really exercising, not moving your blood, you're going to bed at like 2, 3 a.m. every night, it's not gonna help, and it's probably not gonna give the body the right conditions to actually heal. Then if you want to get super crazy and creative, you can get into things like hyperbaric oxygen, the Novathor bed, float tanks, all types of things. But it just kind of depends on how gung-ho you want to be and how much budget you have. Let's see, do you notice benefits from common herbs like cinnamon, turmeric, and oregano? I mean, yeah, those are just nice things to have in your diet. Oregano oil is really a potent antiviral, so that's good to have around if you're someone who deals with people getting sick or yourself gets sick a lot. Oregano oil is like a potent medicine. But yeah, like cinnamon, ginger, turmeric, all those things are really useful and beneficial and should be included just in your diet and your food intake, which is something a lot of Asian cultures were hip to a long time ago, and for some reason people aren't that hip to it now in terms of just like standard American food, unless you get into fine dining. Once you get into fine dining, then they usually will bring those things back in, and you'll be able to get things with actually herbs in it, and you'll usually be able to get higher quality, better food, but you're obviously going to pay a lot more for it, so it's not really sustainable all the time. Best thing to improve memory function? One thing is just using it. use it or you lose it, that type of thing. So reading books, listening to lectures, and then trying to recall it in some way, whether it's telling your friend about it or writing about it. Things like lion's mane or rosemary, things like that. Even just smelling rosemary oil or peppermint oil can like clear your head. Also, just before you go to bed at night, you can kind of just rewind your day and use your memory to go backwards. And usually you'll either fall asleep very quickly, or you'll find all these holes and gaps in your day, or you'll eventually be able to work your way back, and that'll be good for the memory. So there you go. And honestly, for me, if I try to remember something as a specific standalone thing, it's not that easy. But if I just remember it in a bigger, wider way based on a feeling, then it's actually easier. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's my answer. So now I'm like, I don't know, five brews into this 90s shung, and it's a nice ruby red type color. It looks more orange on the iPad, but it's actually, in my light, a nice kind of reddish color. And the camphor and the ginseng kind of herbal aroma are now really in the forefront. And there's still a really sweet floral quality as well. Let's see. Do you worry about tea and iron levels if you drink tea after you eat? Nope. I don't know what is that referencing. I've not heard anything about that. So I don't know. That, and actually within Asian cultures, like they would consume heicha after a meal because it would help with digestion. It would help break down fatty foods and help get things move through your digestive system. So if they knew it impaired your iron or some nutrient mineralization, then I don't know. Tea can inhibit the absorption of iron. I just don't know if I honestly believe that, because tea is a huge category. Meaning, if I go to the store and I buy green tea, right? 99% of the time what that is literally stuff they swept off the floor of the factory. Dirt, dust, sticks, trimmings, literally garbage. So that is tea, technically. This is also tea. This has been aged for 30, 40 years, if not older, and it's only been stored in clean environments. It's made from top quality, high grade leaf material from old trees. This is also tea. This is not stuff they swept off the floor. This is not garbage. This is not trimmings. This is not $3 a box. This is like $500 a cake. So those are both tea. So how are we going to make a blanket statement about both of those things? Plus, if I took that swaggy dust garbage tea and I threw it in boiling water, or I microwaved it in a plastic cup, that's one thing. Or I used spring water and gently rinsed the tea, this aged tea, and then brewed it up in this, which is 45 years old, aged Yixing clay. I brewed the tea in this. That's going to be a very different result in every tangible thing than the other thing that we called tea. So let's say I'm going to use both of these and I'm going to do a study about how tea affects digestion. In all likelihood, the research that's done is oftentimes on the former. It's not on the latter. And usually it's done by people who might not know diddly squat about tea. So when people are like, tea does this, tea does that, I'm like, I don't know if that's really true, and I honestly, it doesn't register as relevant or important to me on a personal basis. I'm not anemic. I have been anemic in my life. I have been iron deficient, but I'm not now, and I drink a lot of tea, so I don't think it necessarily is that relevant. I do agree that tea can make people's blood kind of thin and make them deficient from like a Chinese medicine perspective, because there are certain types of people that get attracted to it. Not naming any names, but like oftentimes a lot of global tea hut type people who are very blood deficient and qi deficient and yang deficient already, like thin, wiry, pasty, kind of dullard type people that are spiritual and sensitive. And then they start drinking all this tea, but they're not really eating that much. And they're not eating actually dense enough food to build enough blood. So then if those people are drinking a lot of tea and they're already deficient, absolutely, then the tea will make them more deficient and make their blood thinner and weaker. Because they're already weak and they're not doing the correct things to actually go in the other direction. And I've seen that, and I see it all the time in my local type community. And just as a side tangent, that it might be offensive and hurtful to a lot of people. The vast majority of the time, if we take what people associate and label as being a highly sensitive person, or like an empath, or even spiritual type things, the vast majority of the time, if you took those next to the symptomology of being blood deficient, they're pretty much usually the same thing. The vast majority of the time, if I work with people or see them, meet them, and they start talking about all these things, I'm just like, wow, your blood and chi are really not there. They're very deficient. And you think you're being sensitive and you're actually being spiritual or tuned in, but you're actually experiencing that because you're unwell, and that's a symptomology of you being unwell and unhealthy and lacking vitality. But you're labeling it as a positive thing, and you're trying to get more of it. So you're just getting less healthy and less vital. I see that quite commonly. Like I remember a few of my friends are Chinese medicine practitioners, and there was a meme that I took a screenshot of on Instagram, and it was like 11 signs you're having a spiritual awakening. Sent it to my friends, and they were just like, actually 11 signs that your blood's really deficient. It's just like, exactly. Such as a fun little wet blanket of a tangent for people. Let's see. So do you gather all of your own drinking water from a spring? No, I just get it delivered at this point, but it's delivered or it's sourced and delivered from a local spring. I just personally don't feel like driving 3-4 hours, 3-4 hours like round trip and then having to lug everything in and out of my house. I don't really feel like doing that anymore, when I could just pay like, I don't know, 30 to 50 bucks a month and have it delivered to my door. That just sounds like a better thing. And I tested it side by side with getting it myself versus the stuff I was buying, and the difference was close enough that it was like, it's not worth me driving all this time. And I have the luxury to get it delivered, and it's great, so I'll just do that instead. Which I highly recommend if you're in a place where you can do that. Let's see, I want to pursue the study of Chinese medicine and martial arts and a lifestyle with a new connection to my body and life. Can you point me in a solid direction? Not really. People often ask me these questions, and I really don't give any answers, because people kind of have to figure it out for themselves and kind of struggle and go through the ringers. So I don't know. If you want to send me something and say, what do you think of this? I can give you my perspective, but in terms of like, what should you do? What direction should you go in? I don't really have a specific thing of advice. I would just say, follow what interests you or excites you or piques your interest, and go with that. And, have your own journey. And that's what I would say. that's what I had to do. Next question is, do you eat frozen foods from time to time? Yep. Like I have some meatballs in my freezer that I'll thaw out and eat. That's what I have for lunch, actually. And that's mostly it. Like frozen meatballs, or I think at one time I bought some frozen butternut squash, but it just wasn't very good. Or, yeah, I mean, that's mostly it. Unless I go out to eat and sometimes it's a crappy restaurant and they use frozen food, that'd be the only time. I don't know if it's necessarily the worst thing or it's necessarily the best thing. It kind of just depends on what your situation is and what you can do that will work for you. So yeah, that's my answer. So yeah, this tea is really good. It definitely has more of that, you can tell it used to be a sheng pu'er flavor, where it has that strong honey sweetness that hits the middle of your tongue and the back of your throat and just lingers. But it has definitely more of the camphor, ginseng, woody thing going on. It's really quite nice. If you could move to a different country, which one would you choose? I've thought about it, actually. Thought about either Holland or Taiwan. So like Amsterdam or Taipei. That's basically what that's what I've considered. And I really considered it a couple years ago. I even looked into what it would take to get a Dutch visa and basically start a business in Holland, which I still might do, actually. I still might open a branch of Hyperion Herbs in the EU, just to be able to access that market, and for all my European clients be able to give them much cheaper delivery in terms of shipping and customs and duties and fees, and much faster delivery. Just because I get emails from people all the time wanting the stuff, but maybe their country doesn't allow the importing from America, or the customs fees are too high, or a lot of different things. So, but if I did that, then I would be able to get a Dutch visa. So I did a lot of research, actually, in terms of what it would take to get a long-term visa and then actually eventually potentially get citizenship or dual citizenship. But either that or Taiwan, which last year I was thinking about going to Taiwan for a few months, but then I decided to do something else, which was just stay here, because I knew I'd be doing a lot of traveling this year and then over the next couple of years, as I'll be doing a Chinese medicine program, for acupuncture program for 2 years. So it's going to take to be a lot of time and money traveling. I'll be going to Europe like 6 times a year for the next couple of years. So I was like, well, I don't really want to go to Taiwan or move anywhere just yet. But mostly my reasoning for Taiwan was Agarwood and tea. But fortunately, I was able to source everything without actually having to leave my apartment. So, like, this is one thing that's always funny when people are like, oh, you like Chinese stuff. Have you ever been to China? I'm like, why? Oh, because I bet the best stuff's there. I'm like, clearly you don't know anything about Chinese history or Chinese culture. You're just kind of operating on, I don't know, some racist stereotypes. It's kind of like when people are like, go to my website and be like, oh, your stuff's from China? I heard stuff from China is not good. I'm like, you realize it's a huge country and literally with billions of people. So you're saying all of them are scammers and the whole place is polluted? Haven't really thought that one through, have you? But honestly, no, I have not gone to China nor felt any need to go, because I've had honestly superior teachers without having to go there and deal with all of the other nonsense that you'd have to deal with if you go there. So that's just good fortune and good luck, which I'm happy about. But yeah. Let's see, man, this tea's making me like a little sweaty. I'm getting hot. Let's see. I missed some questions. Oh yeah, so what are the new teas? I missed that part. You're gonna have to just watch the recording because I've already said that like 3 times. But it's gonna be 3 teas, priced 20 per ounce for the 80s loose shung, 45 an ounce for the 90s sinking shung, which I'm drinking right now. And then the other one is 100-gram tocha for like 40 or 45. So it's like almost 4 ounces of tea for like 40 or 45 bucks. This tea is spectacular. So those are going to be my first 3 initial offerings, and then I'll eventually build out the product catalog. But all of them will be somewhat similar in nature because I have a very specific flavor profile and a very specific quality that I look for in tea. So that's what I'm going to sell. Because that's basically oftentimes what you're dealing with when you're buying from a tea company. You're just buying that person's palate or their level of education, their level of understanding. Some people, actually quite a lot, majority of people that are into tea are just like intellectuals. They talk about the facts and the figures and all these things, which it's like, whoop-de-doo. Really, it's not that interesting. To me, I'm more about the classical, authentic, aged profiles that used to be more popular and are actually closer to what it actually should be. So that's my interest. So that's what I will be sharing and offering because that's all I really care about. Let's see. Can you take ashwagandha and reishi together long term? Reishi definitely long term is okay. Ashwagandha, I don't think it's really that good long term. I don't really believe ashwagandha is the adaptogen that it's hyped up to be. I think it can be useful in many situations, but it's definitely not on the level of like reishi or cordyceps or chaga or lion's mane, in my opinion. It has a much narrower application and a much narrower much narrower audience, let's say. So I probably would not take that long term, but it also means, what do you mean by long term? A week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 months, 2 years, 12 years? So depends on what you mean, but I would say the mushrooms are definitely a safer bet for the long term. What are your thoughts on ginseng? Well, as an herb, it can be useful in Chinese herbal formulas, but honestly, it's usually not used. People use Cautinopsis or other things which are cheaper. In my opinion, personally, I would not consume ginseng that was not wild and not at least 25 years old or 30 years old. But good luck finding that. I happen to be lucky enough to have sources for very old wild ginseng, which I take for my own benefit, but it is very expensive, very rare, and near impossible to find. It basically extinct within the global marketplace. So I think it can be great, but I think it's generally out of reach for most people. And it kind of just depends on why someone wants to take it. The wild stuff can have very esoteric, subtle qualities. So unless you're at the point to appreciate and acknowledge and recognize and work with those qualities, it's probably a waste, money-wise and time-wise. So it's better to probably take lots of other things like gynostemma or many other adaptogens that are much cheaper and do a lot of things that are more accessible. So that's what I would say about ginseng in general. Does cooking these mushrooms destroy any of the benefits, say sauteing with oil? What do you mean by these mushrooms? Like, if you buy a shiitake or maitake at the store, you don't want to eat those raw. That's kind of gross. You want to cook that. You want to saute that up. If you buy fresh lion's mane, you want to saute that up. That's just called cooking. people worry about cooking destroying nutrients, but cooking generally actually makes things more available and more digestible and beneficial to your body. So I just wish raw food people would stop with their propaganda and misinformation and incorrect information, and stop putting fear and anxiety into people, because it's just simply not true. So yeah, if you're buying shiitake, maitake, enoki, oyster, whatever else at the grocery store, you definitely want to saute those up with some oil, or cook them in a stew, or bake them in the oven, or whatever your recipe or your meal is calling for. You definitely don't want to eat those raw. Let's see. Next question. How do you deal with the frustration of, quote, dumb people? I guess perhaps maybe you can extrapolate and expand on what you actually mean by, quote, frustration with dumb people. And then I can answer, because I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to. Let's see. What kind of subtle qualities do you find with wild ginseng that you can articulate? It depends on the age. The older it is, can definitely have deeper effects. And then once you get into certain age ranges, it basically is something that, let's just say, changes the organizational quality of your incarnation. Alters your DNA. Let's just use that. Can alter the way your life unfolds. The really strong stuff can definitely have an effect on karma, can open up things psychically, can change your perception quite dramatically, can change the course of your life. All of those things are definitely there. But it just kind of depends on the age. I happen to have a decent collection up on my bookshelf of various very old aged wild roots that I use at different parts of my practices to support those things that I mentioned. But in a general sense, a lot of the aim is actually getting the mind to anchor inside the body. If you imagine the body as a sponge, then actually getting the mind to soak through and completely fill the sponge and stay anchored and submerged in the sponge, versus people are, honestly, mostly everyone is like their mind is out here, or it's far ahead, or it's somewhere else. It's not in their body. And you can tell. This is, like, it might sound abstract or esoteric, but it's really tangible. If someone has this quality, you can feel it in their tissues. You can push on them, and it's there. It's tangible. If you know what you're looking for and you know what it is, it's all very obvious. You can look at the way people move. You can, because it's kind of an annoying thing where people think spiritual stuff or energetic stuff is intangible, or doesn't have clear, verifiable, measurable effects on the physicality, but that's actually the case. Meaning, if something changes spiritually or energetically, it will manifest in the body, and there will be a clear thing that you can look for, you can test for, you can measure to ascertain, yes, this happened, no, it didn't happen. It's very tangible, very clear, very obvious. It's not esoteric whatsoever. Next question. What are your experiences with psychedelics? Basically, I just took mushrooms maybe like 5 or 6 times when I was like 21. Smoked a lot of weed for a few years. That's pretty much it. I think I tried ayahuasca and DMT back in those days as well, but it didn't do anything. That's the extent of it. I would say at the time, some of my experiences were kind of useful and helpful in that it opened me up And I was able to see myself in a different way and realize perhaps different aspects of my character and my conduct and my actions that weren't that constructive, and then change those things or make just simple changes in that way. None of it was grandiose or I saw geometric patterns and triangles and fairies and elves, and honestly, who the fuck cares about any of that stuff? Basically, if people are having those experiences, it's usually a symptom that something went wrong. Or they're not willing to actually look at themselves. So, yeah. So to me, that was useful for a little bit, and then was quickly not very useful or appealing past a certain point. But I think with the right set and setting and mindset and the right situation, those things can be useful for people, but in short-term acute things, not like, oh, it's a tonic, I'm going to do it all the time. It's like, you don't want to do that. Let's see. What's the next question? Does chaga have those qualities? Which qualities are you referring to? Chaga has many qualities, but I'm not sure what I was saying when when you said that comment, or whatever qualities I was referring to. So if you can tell me what qualities you're referring to about chaga, I can answer it more accurately. Thoughts on supercritical CO2 extraction? Any benefit over high pressure / hot water? I think it just maybe depends on what the product is, what you're trying to accomplish. Certain things that could probably be good, other things not so much. So I don't know. I've honestly never really think about it. And I honestly, in that way, I'm kind of a simpleton. I'm not really like a techno dork. I don't really spend my hours thinking about micro nuances of chemistry and biology based on like whatever mechanical processes. I just rather keep it simple. It's a hot water extract done in this way, and it has these effects because it was grown in the right way, and it is what it is. Done. I'm not like a techno shaman type guy, or just not really my interest. I just don't care. It's not my thing. It's not my interest. Let's see. Does chaga have similar qualities the way ginseng does, the subtle ones? Not that I've ever noticed, to be honest. I mean, the chaga has some subtlety to it because at least the stuff I sell is all wild harvested. So because it's a wild product, it has a slightly different vibe. But in no way, shape, or form would I ever compare it to wild ginseng in those ways. It's definitely special and useful, but more immunological, more on that side of things. Whereas wild ginseng is like thousands of years of mythology and lore and usage in Taoism, in alchemy, in high-level medicine. So I wouldn't say that. Let's see. Let's see, next questions. I'm seeing some sentences and statements, but I'm not, where's the question? For example, let's say you work at a company, your coworkers are constantly sick. They eat junk all the time, yet they constantly belittle your use of herbal medicine, tell you you're full of crap for believing in alternative medicine, and you attempt to help them understand it better so it can help them too, because you're never sick thanks to alternative medicine, but they act like you believe in some kind of childish nonsense. Honestly, the only solution there is, oh, I see what you mean. Earlier you said, how do I deal with the frustration of dumb people? And hopefully, I think this is you explaining what you meant by dumb people. There's a quote that's pearls before swine, meaning, I don't know, you definitely probably should look up that quote and dwell upon it, because I mean, if someone doesn't have the eyes to appreciate something or the whatever, then you're wasting your time and energy trying to communicate to them about it. So I would just drop it, move on, have some assuredness and security within yourself, and just don't give a shit what they say or think or do, and basically get emotionally neutral about it. Because if you can control your own emotional response, then that will eventually neutralize them, because they'll put something out and you're not going to react, so they're not going to get anything back, so they're eventually just going to move on, because generally people are, you know, self-absorbed and very distracted and ungrounded, so they're not going to stick it out or think you're even that important. But if you resist and you engage and you validate their ridiculousness, then they're just going to keep engaging. Like if someone says something very absurd and ridiculous and you respond to that, then you're just validating that, when in reality it's ridiculous and absurd and it's not even a real thing. So why even engage? It's just not worth the time or the energy. But it's also just it's just part of the growth process, I think, that you have to go through to eventually develop the self-assuredness to just not care, and also just not need other people to see it your way or do it your way or whatever. Like if they want to be sick, if they want to be miserable, if they want to do what they got to do, then that's their free will. And it's kind of arrogant to assume that you have the right to tell them what they should do, because you're mad because they tell you that what you do is stupid, meaning they're trying to tell you what to do. So on the same time, they're going to be mad if you try to tell them what to do, because no one really wants to be told what to do. So yeah, that's a short answer. Just accept it for what it is and then move on with your life. I mean, be grateful that your health is good and be grateful that you don't get sick, and just let them wallow in the dirt. If that's what they want to do, that's their choice. I mean, you don't have the right to tell them they shouldn't. You know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them have insight, is another way to put it. So that's what I would say. But something like that is just a very common experience, and it's just a rite of passage that probably all of us have to go through at some point. Wait, what? You are saying that anyone who was legitimately into this stuff wouldn't be here. What does that mean? I'm not entirely sure what what you're saying. I don't really follow that comment. Let's see. I think I've answered all the questions that have been on there, so if you guys want to drop more questions in here, I can answer them. Otherwise, I'll sit here and drink tea quietly. You can just stare like a creeper. Now, I'll probably light some incense, actually. Get some sandalwood or agarwood. So viewers poll, what should I do? Agarwood, sandalwood. Someone tell me which one I should burn, and I'll burn it. Let's see who's going to answer it first. If not, I'll just have to choose myself. Agarwood it is. Damn. Too slow. I'll burn agarwood, then I'll burn sandalwood. How about that? Hold on, listen to this. Nice. Yeah, here we go. Actually, I think I have one over here. All right, here it is. About to light it up. Here it is. About to get fumigated up in here. Just gonna set this over here, let it burn up. So one weird thing that generally happens whenever I burn incense is that the smoke will follow me. It's pretty interesting. All right, here we go. Oh yeah, let's see. Do you think heavy metal abrasive music, or do you think heavy/abrasive music like metal is damaging to the nervous system? I mean, I think if you like it, if you really like it, then it's probably not damaging. Personally, to me, it's annoying, so it's probably damaging. But really, oftentimes it comes down to whatever your emotional preference is. Like, I used to listen to music like that when I was a lot younger, and I liked it. It gave me emotional satisfaction, so it probably wasn't damaging. It's probably cathartic. Had some emotional experiences, so that's good. But I think it depends on if you're trying to meditate a lot and quiet down your insides, then it's going to be contraindicated because it's obviously the direct opposite. Until you reach the point to where you're internally stable enough to where you're not really swayed or affected or bothered by the external world, which is kind of a tall order for a lot of people. But honestly, to me personally, that music's kind of annoying and sounds just juvenile and immature and obnoxious. Like if I go to a restaurant and they're playing that, I'm just like, man, is it high school? Is it junior high again in here? And honestly, it's getting to the point now where I almost don't even want to go out to eat anymore because so many places just have the worst music and it's so loud. For some reason, they don't understand ambiance, they don't understand subtlety. But at the same time, I understand they're probably there, they don't want to be there, they're just kind of getting through, and the music allows them to just get through their job that they don't really like. But as a consumer or as a Patreon, it's kind of annoying. What do you think of cedarwood? I don't really have any straight cedarwood incense, and I've never pursued it that directly. I think I might have a cedarwood essential oil somewhere, but I've never really got that deep into it. It's in one of the perfumes or colognes. I guess it's a perfume. It's like an all-natural, botanically based perfume that's like, I think it's like $1,200 a bottle. But I got a little sample of it, and I think there's cedarwood in there. It's a pretty classical incense ingredient. Well, I'm sure it's good, but hasn't really caught my passion. Let's see. Do you suspect lipofuscal deposits are entirely reversible? I don't even know what that is. I assume it's some kind of fatty deposit, but I don't really know, so I can't really answer with any degree of certainty or whatever. Do you play with synthetic pheromones? Nope, never. Just my own natural, my own natural body odor. That's all you need. If you're really into the person, then you'll probably like their pheromones. And if they're into you, they'll probably like your pheromones. Do you have any interest in making recipe videos for YouTube like you used to in the old days? I mean, I probably should, but my kitchen kind of sucks for filming, and that's why I haven't done any. Kind of just depends on, I don't know, I don't really make that many recipes anymore. I mean, I've written multiple ebooks with recipes. I've done like hundreds of videos on recipes. I've probably got 100 recipes on my blog. Just that after a while, it's kind of like, there you go, there's 400 recipes, within ebooks, podcasts, articles, videos. It's all there. That, and basically in my Elixir or my Blender Alchemy ebook, I gave the formula. I gave how to create the recipe with the hopes that people can then create their own recipes. And then even in my tonic herbal course that's on Udemy, I did the same thing. I was like, here's the formula. Here's how you build an elixir. Here's how you need to look at it and what you need to plug and play in each of these categories to build something that's functional. Because personally, I mean, I guess I was thinking about this morning because I've spent like so many years of my life making those type of recipes that now I just can whip it up in the morning. I don't even have to think about it. Like, I was doing coffee for quite a while. Um, I was doing coffee. I was basically doing like 8 to 12 ounces of pour over, and then I was doing like a tablespoon of butter, a couple teaspoons of the brain octane oil, and then like 2 teaspoons of reishi or chaga or cordyceps or lion's mane or whatever mushroom I had, and that was like my recipe. But now I have to, or I had to quit coffee for the next 3 or so months in preparation for a retreat that I'm doing. So I had to cut out coffee and a few other things to basically prepare. So now I'm gonna use Dandy Blend. I'm trying to find a good herbal combination to try to mimic the stuff that I was getting from coffee. Because if I just do like roasted dandelion root tea as the base, it has like some top end notes and some bottom end, but everything in the middle is just like you drink it and you just flavor and it just drops. Whereas the coffee, you get this nice like full flavor and then it just casual cascade out because it has this full body oily content. The same with this tea. You get it and it's just smooth and full. So, I mean, dandelion root doesn't contain a lot of oils. So it doesn't have that thing. It has some of the other notes. So I'm trying to figure out how to fill in those notes and get that full flavor from something that tastes like coffee but isn't and doesn't have those effects. So, but I just do that same formula, but then add in like whatever herbs I have around, astragalus extract, reishi, cordyceps, chaga, lion's mane, and that's it. But it's based on the formula that I gave in the Udemy course, that I gave in the Blender Alchemy book. It's all there. Let me see. Is reishi is better with food or before a meal? Honestly, probably away from food. I mean, just like one example is you can just take it with hot water. You can just drink it as a tea, so you can drink it as a tea with food. You can take it after. It kind of doesn't matter as much, to be honest. Kind of just depends on your digestion and your metabolism and preference. It's not really better or worse either way. It's pretty absorbable, I think. So let me see here. I remember you said that in Qigong, the very beginning stages is trying to get a specific body so that you could even start doing the practice. For those who are looking for a qualified teacher, what would you advise we do to physically prepare our body and mind other than the Udemy course? Well, the early stages is like 3 to 5 years. Assuming you practice every day for like 2 hours at least, then maybe 3 to 5 years. And let's say you have help from a teacher and you're seeing the teacher on a regular basis, then you might be able to get that done in that period of time. But for most people, realistically, it's going to be a lot longer because they're not going to put in that time and energy and dedication to really get those results. So honestly, I would just say do the the course, and then I'm going to do a follow-up course actually with more practical stuff. So that follow-up course will probably answer your question in a lot more detail. So yeah, but it's the same with any system. Like for Qigong, yeah, you need to put in those 3 to 5 years of foundations. But if you try to do Tai Chi or Bagua or Xingyi or any internal art, it's the same thing. It takes that many years, if not longer, to actually build the correct body so that you can actually start even trying to begin practicing the thing. If you start talking about meditation, you start talking about going deep into sitting practice, it's way longer of a timetable. You need this initial foundation plus a lot more. And you have to do all of the physical work and shaping and preparation. Then you have to do all those same things for your mind and your breath. Those all have to be regulated and shaped and prepared in the correct way. And then you're going to need a lot of help from a teacher on top of all of these things. So it's not really accessible for a lot of people, unfortunately. Which is why the emphasis became just make people feel good, just give people a little health and relaxation, because that's a little more accessible to people than doing anything perhaps very deep or transformative. It's kind of unjust and unfair, but that's kind of life in many ways. San Diego is just as good as Taiwan and Holland. I mean, I think I've been to San Diego once or twice, and it was okay. But it was a bit too crowded, a bit too Southern California and trafficy for me, and also expensive. But maybe I'll examine it in another time, because it would be nice to get that amount of sunshine all the time. Yeah, and just that good weather all the time would be so good. So maybe someday. Need to like visit and check it out again more. What do you know about astrology? It's been a long time since I've really paid any attention or studied it. I'm honestly not a fan, and I don't really believe in it. I think that there is probably some causal, perhaps, relationship with the micro and the macro, but that is not really relevant, I think, most of the time. And I think it's dramatically misunderstood in modern times, and I've not ever met an astrologer who actually knew what they were talking about or spoke anything that was other than their own emotional projections. Because the exception being perhaps Chinese astrology, because there could have actually been like an oral tradition of things being passed on, an actual tangible thing, versus we don't have that really in the West. Everything's just kind of intellectual and piecemeal. So I don't really buy into it. I think the vast majority of the time it's just a cop-out and an excuse for people, like a way for them to project onto things and make things mean what they want it to mean. But it's just a common tendency that people do. People never often want to take the time to be like, okay, here's what I think and feel and want, and this is my bias and baggage and expectation. Okay, I can see that. But then what did they actually mean? What are they actually trying to come across, and where were they actually coming from? What was their worldview? What was their experience like? And how can I try to understand that? But a great way to understand that people are generally incapable of this is the most common thing everyone tries to do is be like some Gary Zukov type nonsense, the Dancing Wu Li Masters, or like Greg Braden, or all these new age airheads who are like, the ancient people are just saying what we have been just now figuring out through science. Like spirituality and science have been at odds, but now they're not. It's like, dude, really? Like, come on. It's just such a pathetic, boring, dull, airheaded, intellectual misstep that it's like, it's just not true at all. But as people like Alan Watts and all these modern people are like, oh, here's how all these things are already are very similar. They're all the same, and they're saying the same thing but in different ways, and all passively up the mountains. And the ancient people are just saying what we're trying to figure out now, and all this just stupid nonsense, self-absorbed, small-minded ridiculousness. And all that is a reflection of is just taking all of their pre-existing bias and baggage and conditioning and just putting it and projecting it on something else in a very small-minded way, which it's really stupid, but it appears very smart because it looks like you're very intelligent, but all you did was just make patterns and associations where there probably were not. Because people don't have the equipment to actually understand what perhaps these other traditions meant. Because it's square peg in a round hole, basically. It's just not, we don't have the right tool, we don't have the right mind, we don't have anything at all, because we've been running the contradictory canceling out programming for 1,000 years or whatever. So that eventually at a certain point, doors behind us just close, and it's very difficult to get them open again. So that's why people just repeat the same old nonsense, which is why goofballs like Osho and all these absurd, ridiculous modern gurus just basically tell people what they already want to hear in varying degrees. And people are like, oh my God, this is profound, this is amazing, it's so spiritual. And it's like, no, you're literally just stimulating your nervous system and projecting a bunch of nonsense. Another great example of this is a meme that's really common that I see like every day on Instagram. And here's the recipe. Kind of a sappy woman who's like probably way too into her feelings, way too identified and wound up with her emotions and feelings, right? But then she's spiritual. She does yoga and she's into self-care and is, you know, into the wild woman sisterhood and uplifting feminine and females and social justice and racial equality and all the common predictable social memes, right? Commonly, they're going to have this post where it's one part yoga flow and then the other part sappy emo type music. And then the yoga is usually like, I wasn't going with the structure, I wasn't worrying about the pose, I was just with whatever's coming up and just allowing blah, 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 blah. And they have the sappy music, and there's going to be some long-winded, you know, emotionally driven post about, I thought I was sick, or I thought I was broken, but I was just having a spiritual breakthrough. I was releasing a pattern, I was releasing energy, and I had this emotional thing in this, and like this long-winded thing, which in their mind is like spiritual, and it's transformative, and it's profound, and it's allowing them to be a healer because they're sharing it with people, and it's spiritual because it's yoga, but it's emotional because it has music, and it's embodied because they're moving their body. All these things, this layer of complex mental jargon that they're putting on it. When in reality, they were just already over-identified with their feelings, way wound up with their whims, i.e. they were probably somewhat manic, meaning this big up and down, you know, really completely controlled and dominated by whatever their emotional whim was. Really insecure, which is why they need all the isms and all the social things to prop them up. In so many other things. So it's like what's actually happening versus what their mental programming is the exact opposite. So it's just, this is what so many of these, quote, teachers or spiritual nonsense, it's just what it eventually becomes, because that's what people are programmed for, that's what they're primed for, and that's what feels natural to them. So that's just what ends up happening. And you stretch that out over a long enough period of time, and then again, all these doors start closing, and then it's just confusion, label and confusion, and there's no clarity, there's no precision, there's no nothing. It's just kind of empty nonsense. But it makes people feel good because it has these labels. So that's kind of why I'm not, yeah. It's a bit of a tangent, and I'm sorry if it, you know, if anyone's like the sappy emo yoga chick on Instagram. There's nothing against it. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just pointing out there's like what it actually is and what's actually happening in reality versus what all of the mental baggage and programming is, and how it's basically just taking an imbalance and making it worse. Meaning, like I said earlier, I made the joke about the meme that was like 7 signs you're having a spiritual awakening. And I sent it to my Chinese medicine friends, and we're just like, actually 7 signs that you're really blood deficient and you need to like change your diet and lifestyle. So what happens is people have this imbalance, they have this disease, they have this dysfunctional thing, but they label it as like spiritual or something positive. So then it just gets worse, because what you practice is what you become. And this is a really common error, because people think like Eastern spiritual stuff is like natural. Do what feels natural. Do what feels right to you. Actually, that's not what they're really saying or talking about at all. really those things are unnatural. Like Taoism is not natural whatsoever. Taoist training and systems and practices aren't natural. They're the opposite of natural. Because Taoism's fundamental thing is reversing the course. That is numero uno, obvious. Like in every one of these traditions says basically anything that you can be aware of or identify with has nothing to do with who or what you actually are. They also say, they call the emotions the 5 poisons. Like they have all of these things that are kind of aggressive and mean and dark and sort of negative to our mind, but it's just showing that this is not an easy, feel-good, self-help, therapeutic kind of thing. It's not a natural thing. It's actually quite the opposite. It's very uncomfortable. It's painful. It's a pain in the ass. So the point of that is, if what we're doing is, oh, it feels natural, then it's probably just more of the same, which is fine, but just perhaps have your actions and your words and your beliefs actually line up and be on the same page. So that was a bit of a tangent. Let me go back and see if I missed any questions. What do you think of nofap/no porn? I mean, I think probably it's a beneficial thing for a lot of people who are probably porn addicts or masturbation addicts. I think porn in general, a lot of it can be gross and overstimulating, but there is the flip side where there's this whole amateur movement or a whole other movement that's not really gross or violent or derogatory or exploitive. So it's kind of just depends on choose your own adventure is what it could be. But obviously in general, having a healthy relationship with someone that you care about is probably much healthier and better in the long term. But I think people definitely get a little bit whacked out and crazy with their whole no-fap movement. Let me see. Do you think it's worth it to have social media if you don't make money off of it? You mean for me personally or just in general? I mean, social media is one of these things where it's in many ways just a tool. Like, for example, I saw an interview recently with Gary Vaynerchuk and some dude on Fox News, and they were trying to argue, like, social media is ruining the generation. It's making us all dumber. It's making us all less connected. It's ruining the world. It's blah, blah, blah. It's doom and gloom. Which is kind of what people have been saying about every new medium. Like, oh, it's MTV, it's ruining the world. It's going to be the downfall of civilization. Or Elvis, he's going to ruin the world because he moved his pelvis on TV. Like, all these things, whatever's new, people are just kind of going to be afraid of. But ultimately, it's a tool, so it depends on really how you use it. So I think I read an article about this recently, where it was like, basically, if you were able to form healthy connections and relate to people in an authentic way, then social media actually could make you happier and be more useful because you're authentically connecting with more people and you're able to stay in touch with people in a real way. If you're doing it in a way that's not authentic or dishonest or disingenuous or based on whatever other agenda, then it will make you feel worse. So ultimately, it's kind of a choice up to each person. If you're just bored and just scrolling through for hours, then yeah, that's not going to be very rewarding, is it? So it kind of just depends on how you use it, I think. Focusing on more mundane things seems to have more payoff than when I was doing the kind of spiritual airhead stuff you're talking about. It's kind of like some of the positive things that Jordan Peterson is telling people, which is kind of basic, simple stuff, which is just like, hey, get your life together, form meaningful relationships, get your economic status in a better place, build a solid foundation for your life, take responsibility for your life. All these kind of simple, basic things that are very important, that you really need to do. And to be quite honest, how things work generally in actual traditions is teachers will judge you based on how your life actually is. If your life is not sorted out and you've got chaos and drama, or you're really poor, or you're really whatever, all these things, they probably won't teach you. You're not going to get access to high level stuff because you haven't been able to even master the basic simple stuff of just your mundane life. So how are you going to master esoteric cosmic stuff? Like there's just no way. You're trying to sprint before you can crawl is kind of the view. It's not really, I mean, that's not what I wanted to hear when I was like 18 and 20 and early 20s. I didn't want to hear that. I was like, no, who cares? Like, I don't have to worry about that. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna open my chakras, and that's all I need to do. It's not really how it works, man. But it's just part of the process. You know, people have to go through things, and people have to learn their own lessons. I want to ask, what is the best direction you have found to understand the physical body and its relationship to spirit? Honestly, that is what Chinese medicine is, or what it came out of. It's understanding the relationship between the mind and the body, and basically how the mind causes disease to manifest in the body. How you can understand this is if you remove all the spiritual connotation from Chinese medicine, because that's not true. That's a misunderstanding. In Chinese medicine, when they say the word Shen, they don't mean spirit. It just means mind. If you look on my Udemy course on tonic herbs, I broke down the 3 treasures and I explained this in great detail. And actually my Shen video might be for free. It might be free on YouTube if you search for it. But basically, Shen just means kind of your intellect and your mind, your sense of self, depending on which aspect it's correlated to. That's it. It can eventually, at high levels of attainment and cultivation, transfer over and convert to something related to spirit, but that's not where you start. And that's all lost. No one understands that. They think, oh, Chinese medicine, spiritual. Oh, they have like the Shen of the heart and spirits and all these things. Nope, that's just your ridiculous projection and your idealistic nonsense. You want to take your vague, ungrounded, poorly formed, vague nonsense and project it onto this thing, and then now you're going to be some kind of healer, shaman joke of a practitioner. No, that's not what it means at all. And a friend of mine recently sent me an interview about the truth about Shen from some other herbal company. I couldn't get past like 3 minutes because I'm just like, this guy has no clue what he's talking about. It's just everything was completely incorrect. But it's incorrect in a relative sense, meaning it was correct for them because they have literally no internal skill, no internal cultivation, none, zero. Their mind is not in their body. It is not soaked through the wetsuit. They don't have any actual chi. They're just operating in a purely mundane, intellectual way because that's what they were taught in school, and that's their level of practice and cultivation. The way the medicine works is the things will always change meaning depending on at what actual level that you're at. So, yeah. If you understand Shen as actually some aspect of your mind and understand Chinese medicine in that way, then that's really what it's about. It's talking about the unfoldment of your Jing, the expression of your Ming, and looking at how your mind and your body are relating. That's it, primarily. So if you have that correct mindset when you're understanding it, then you can have a huge, huge understanding. But it's also, you have to understand that, like, within anything, you don't start off advanced. You will always start from the beginning, from the basics, from the rudimentary, which that stuff is always wrong, because if you're more intermediate and then more experienced and advanced, then you realize, oh, that was just kind of training wheels. That was just kind of the rudimentary basic stuff. which, yes, the fundamentals never change, but there's a lot of other things that actually do change. And you might do, like in certain aspects of training, you would never do again what you did in the beginning because it would actually be wrong. But that's just what you had to do in the beginning to get you going. So it's a subtle nuance and a detail that you have to take into consideration. But a lot of people don't do that because they're like, oh, what I learned in Chinese medicine, that's the gospel. So I'm going to practice for 20 years. But it's like, that's still where you're at. So that's why people have to add. They have to add in all these other, they want to do fusions. If someone has to do fusions and mixtures and additions and all these things, they have no skill, ultimately, is what it comes down to. So that's my opinion about, what do you want to do to understand the physical body in relationship to spirit, but also understand that Chinese words can mean different things in different contexts. Sometimes Shen can just mean the body. Sometimes Shen can mean spirit, but most of the time it just means like the mind, aspect of the mind. Do you still use gotu kola or other herbs from the Ayurvedic tradition? Aside from holy basil, nope. Pretty much just that. Do you ever brew gynostemma Gong Fu style? Oh yeah, for sure. It lends itself really well to that. If you brew gynostemma Gong Fu, you mix it with some of the honey chrysanthemums or wild rose buds I have on the site, then you can Gong Fu brew that for a long time. It's super good. So I do that like at night if I want to have tea, but I don't want any caffeine or stimulation. Got a Gong Fu brew the gynostemma. So definitely recommend that. Let's see. What other questions? I don't think I missed any. So I'll probably wrap it up soon because it's been over 2 hours and I gotta pee and I gotta drink some water and stuff. So I'll probably wrap it up soon. So if you have any final questions, start throwing them in there so I can get them. What do you think of kava and valerian? I think they can be useful if you need sedation or in a medicinal sense. I don't think they're not tonics, they're not adaptogens, but they can be useful herbs for their specific purposes. I think kava is a bit drying, a bit imbalancing over the long term, but if you need it to knock you out or sedate you, or you use it occasionally in a social way, then that's probably fine. But I don't really consume either of them myself. Do you still do any foraging? No, not really. Not in many years. My foraging experience was somewhat limited to just reishi. Which it was funny, people would hit me up and ask me questions about, can you identify this plant? Can you identify this mushroom? And I'm just like, unless it's reishi, I can't really identify it. I'm not like, that's not my forte. I'm not like a foraging expert. I can ID like 5 or 10 plants and that's about it. Yep. Let's see. Do you agree with Dr. Peterson that hierarchies are good? Well, I would say that hierarchies are neutral because it's just an organizational strategy, which seems to have evolved over time. Hierarchies can be completely oppressive and evil and just terrible for everyone involved, or they can be benevolent and useful. So it kind of depends on who's in the hierarchy. But to say that hierarchies are bad and we should get rid of them is just idiocy. But for some reason it's a popular meme right now, but it's just completely dumb. And it's not a good idea. It's not gonna be better. Because just study history. People just need to study history and take some history classes and see what happens when these things happen. It's just shocking that people are all of a sudden into Marxism and communism again. It's like, have you studied history at all? Like, just give it half an hour and read up about how that's played out. But the problem here really is that people can only think in very simplistic either or type of things. Like, oh, so if this is bad, so we have to get rid of all of it, so then this must be good. No, it depends. It's a spectrum. Like, there's many nuanced points and complicated interactions and relationships with all of these things. So you kind of have to really spend more time thinking about it and analyzing it. And I really wish this whole thing about like, oh, down with the patriarchy, down with hierarchies, down with capitalism, it's just really dumb. And I'm tired of hearing it. It's it's a way for people to feel morally superior and appear like they're intelligent because they're allegedly participating in some conversation, but ultimately it's just some passive-aggressive, manipulative, emotionally laden strategy that usually has literally nothing behind it other than childish, adolescent type emotions and naive, idealistic sentiments about the world. So I think I do agree with him in the sense that people need to grow up, sort out their own life first, build a solid foundation in their own life, and then start making advice about the world, then start thinking they know how to do anything. But oftentimes the people who are making these lofty claims, their life is not that organized. Their life is not something they're very proud of or happy about or have invested a lot of energy creating an authentic expression of themselves. And it's funny because a lot of the core things that Peterson has been saying is shit I was saying years ago on YouTube and in courses, which is just basically like many of these things like, hey, you want to be mad at the world, you want to get into all these isms, how about you take, I don't know, half that energy and just invest it in yourself and sort your own shit out first before you start talking about this is what's wrong with the world and this ism is the solution. Like, maybe just sort out some of your own demons and your own nonsense first. Like, tend to your own garden first. Then maybe you can actually have some degree of authority and be respected. But honestly, I hear people say these things and I don't respect them and I don't listen to what they have to say because they don't deserve it, because they haven't invested the time and the energy to actually be worthy of real respect and being taken seriously. Next question. Suggestions for what to do while taking antibiotics. Take them with probiotics or eat lots of fermented foods. I'd probably say just take the antibiotics and then when you're done, then hit the fermented foods and the rebuilding. Like, do your killing and then do your rebuilding. Don't do like try to kill and try to rebuild at the same time. That's probably what I would do. I've not taken antibiotics, but I think I remember someone saying that I respected, so I'm just repeating it. Let's see. So because the path of meditation and Qigong is long and difficult, I will say meditation and Qigong are not the same thing, but I understand what you mean. It's just you put a slash, but they're very different. Qigong will not lead to anything more than the mastery of Qi, because that's what the words mean. Meditation is very different. Are there other approaches to the end results these things provide? Nope. Because Qigong is mastery of Qi. So it is what it's called. It does what it's called. So it's like, if I do swimming, will that give me mastery of Qi? No. Why not? Because it's not Qigong. It's like, if I run marathons, will that make me a world-class concert pianist? No, never. Literally never. Well, why not? Because it's not following the linear path to get you from point A to point B. And do you have the potential to do that? Do you have the raw materials to operate at that level? So it kind of just depends. If you just want to relax, chill out, feel good, mellow out, then get a massage, take a salt bath, take herbs, like do normal basic day-to-day things, and they can really improve your health, help you feel better, calm, stable, all these things. But These other things are very specific, so they produce specific results because that's what they are and that's what they do. Have you any experience with reishi spore oil and float tanks? I've done both, but I don't know if I've ever done both together. I'm sure it would be nice, but I usually just would go on float tanks and fall asleep, to be honest. Float tanks for me were never really that profound, other than like I'm just going to chill out and have a power nap. That was pretty much all they ever amounted to for me. Do you grow any plants? Nope. I have one plant. It's like a spider plant, but that's it. What is spirit reishi really? Not sure if you were able to give out too much info about it. Well, I'm not really going to get into it because I'm never going to sell it again. So there's really no point for me to expound upon it. I think there was a window where I was able to sell that and talk about it, and that window has closed. So I'm not really going to share more information about it, especially on YouTube, because I'm strictly prohibited from discussing such things. Let's see. I think there is a lot of justifiable criticisms to capitalism, but Marxism isn't the way to go. Agreed. I think, but that's just maybe more of a difficult, nuanced conversation because nothing's perfect. Yep. What are the best strategies for decreasing internal dampness and heat? Probably seeing an actual Chinese medicine practitioner and getting a specific specific herbal formula, and getting specific treatments. That's kind of boring, but I think that's probably the best way to go. Do you think casual people would be better off spending their time doing deliberate computation of things/ideas versus trying to extinguish thoughts and mindfulness? The thing is, trying to extinguish thoughts is not what meditation's about, really. It's a big misunderstanding. And if you have to try to extinguish your thought, it just means you haven't laid the necessary groundwork and you're not at the correct level to do it. So you shouldn't really try to do it, because that's just called repression and denial, generally speaking. Mindfulness can be useful for people, I think, bringing more awareness to their present moment. That, to me, that is nothing at all related to anything spiritual. To me, it's just common sense. It's like if you're actually showing up and present in your life, then you'll enjoy your life better. That doesn't make you spiritual. It's not profoundly transformative and altering your karma. It has nothing to do with chakras or chi or energy. It's literally just the focused attention of your conscious mind. That's it. So obviously that's useful for people. I mean, deliberate contemplation of themes and ideas, I mean, that can be useful because there's things you can do to just increase your intelligence, increase your memory, increase your thought process. Like, those are useful. Again, they're not meditation. Those are literally just mental exercises. So the problem is that people don't oftentimes understand the words that they use or what they mean or where they come from, and they don't have any real experience or depth or a breadth of training and experience. So a lot of words are just thrown around casually, and just because it's kind of popular and trendy, which is fine because that's just it's the world we live in. But for me, it's not really what I'm interested in. So I tend to be a bit more focused and specific. So yeah, it sounds like you're on the right track though in terms of the questions you're asking and what you're trying to do. But part of it, I mean, the biggest thing I think with all of it is honesty. Being able to honestly look at what you're doing, why you're doing it, and like be okay with that. Like mindfulness or doing yoga. Like I was talking about that whole thing earlier. I was kind of making fun of the emo social justice warrior, like kind of yoga chick who does her, emotional purging, releasing, healing yoga to emo music on Instagram or YouTube or whatever. And everyone chimes in, oh, it's so beautiful. Oh my God, thanks for sharing. It's so empowering. All this type of thing. That's great. But once you start saying that it's this profoundly spiritual thing and it's all this stuff to deal with yoga and it's doing all this stuff, then you become really dishonest. You take a big left turn away from what's actually you're doing and what you're actually happening, which is just being in your feelings and taking your feelings, which were already probably dominating you, and just letting them dominate you more, because you don't understand the nature of feelings, you don't understand the nature of mind, you don't have any solid, cohesive, organized training protocol, you don't have a real authentic method, you don't have real teaching, so you're kind of just all this vague, empty, fuzzy nonsense. So that's just what people are doing, which is fine, but just say that's just what you're doing. So if you want to do mindfulness because you want to pay more attention, try to be more present, and enjoy your life more, that's pretty honest, pretty straightforward, and pretty accurate. So the likelihood that you'll achieve that is exponentially greater because your mind is on the same page with what you're actually trying to do. You start saying, I'm doing mindfulness because that's what Buddha did and Zen masters and Bodhidharma, and it's purging my chakras and it's opening my third eye and I'm opening my whatever energy channels and I'm communing with spirits. You start going in all these psychotic, delusional nonsense, then you're in very dishonest. You're creating schisms in your experience and in your mind, and you're just making yourself worse. So the likelihood that you will ever achieve any of those things is pretty much zero. The likelihood that you'll actually achieve any real degree of mindfulness or ability to pay more attention is almost zero as well, because your mind and your body aren't on the same page and you're not being honest. So what you practice is what you become. The more you practice that delusional nonsense is the more delusional and nonsensical you become. That's just common sense. That's just how life works. If you sit on the couch 12 hours a day, every day, eventually your body is primed and conditioned to sit on the couch for 12 hours a day. You try to go out and run or stand or do these other things, your body is not primed for that because you didn't invest the time, the energy to train it and shape it in that way. So you become what you practice, ultimately. So that's a big takeaway, is that ability to actually be honest and actually look at what you're doing. Like if you're just doing yoga because you chill out, you feel more flexible and loose, it releases your stress and anxiety. Those are all pretty accurate statements. Like that's on point. But you start going to these other realms, then it's straight up la la land. It's straight up fantasy and pure delusion. And then it becomes difficult for anyone to have a conversation with you because you're fucking checked out. Let's see. Where did you learn what you know? Was it mostly self-taught? Originally, it was mostly self-taught, but then in my 20s, I actually started to meet people that were what I would say teachers, or people who are actually skilled in these things, and was able to learn from them. And now I have teachers and I'm able to learn from them and have specific systems and linear paths and methodologies to learn and to actually understand these things in a real, clear, tangible way. But in reality, most of what I taught myself was kind of wrong, if not completely and utterly, entirely incorrect. But that's what I had to do. That's what I had to go through because that's all that was accessible and available. And that's another big side of it that's important, is actually being willing to admit that you're wrong. Because if you're gonna grow, then you have to basically not do what you're doing. So you have to then be willing to admit, oh, that's actually incorrect and inaccurate. So I need to do this other thing, which is painful at times. Let's see, next question. So if you want to give me like a minute or two, I'll go to the bathroom and pee, because there's quite a few questions, probably like 10 questions coming in that I haven't answered. So everyone just hold on for like 2 minutes. I'm gonna go to the bathroom and I'll be right back. So keep yourselves entertained amongst yourselves and I will return momentarily. All right, I'm back. Just gonna get mic'd up. And I'll tell you what. Let's see. Everyone's still here, it looks like. I just broke my lapel mic the other day. I need to get a new one, so I have to kind of rig it up so it actually stays on. It's kind of annoying. It's like kind of one of those mornings where everything you do kind of goes wrong. Alright, I think I'm good to go. There we go. Alright, let's see. What did I miss? The question is in reference to this guy, John Michael Greer, who was advocating what he calls discursive mindfulness versus the McMindfulness stuff. Never heard of that dude, but he sounds like just another really intellectual, heady guy. That's oftentimes a lot of people that get really into mindfulness and Tibetan Buddhist stuff, is they're very intellectual and very out of their body. They're already just way in their mind, so they're like, oh, I'm just going to get way in more in my mind, and it's kind of like, it's not really the point, but whatever works for you, I guess. It's just common that oftentimes these people, at least in my experience, they can only think in like cliches. Spiritual quotes and cliches is like the only thing they can really think and communicate in, and it's like, okay, there's really nothing behind what you're saying other than just cliches. It's just my experience, though. Next question. Do you run? Not really. I mean, I'll do the elliptical at the gym, which I guess is kind of running, but minus the impact. I will probably run eventually at some point, but I kind of trashed my knees for a couple of years. I had pretty bad knee pain just from all the internal training and standing that I was doing, but I had a lot of tightness in my hips and misalignment in my legs, and it caused compression in my knees, so my knees weren't that healthy. So they're much healthier now, so I could probably start running now because my knees are feeling a lot better. But I've just enjoyed the elliptical because it doesn't have the impact, and I can do intervals and resistance and stuff. By the way, looking forward to your joint mobility program. I think you mentioned a couple times ago in a discussion about, Yeah, I still have that plan to do. I mean, I have all the material in my head. I do this stuff all the time. It's just a matter of filming it and getting it done. And maybe I'll put it in my second installment of the Qigong Foundations program. Just things that people can start doing to help open their body up, because these joint things are really, really beneficial. And it's actually some of the things I did to get out of knee pain and actually help strengthen and open my knees up and my ankles and hips. So it was very useful, and it works, and it doesn't necessarily take that long. It's just a few simple things. Next question, is maca a tonic or a medicinal? I would say somewhere in the middle. It's probably good for short-term bursts, but definitely not really a tonic herb like people say it is. It's not really an adaptogen. Unless like you're in Peru or somewhere high elevation, then you're going to need to be on the maca and the coca leaf, from what I've heard. But not a huge fan, but definitely, for a few weeks at a time, because I think that one's really hormonal and eventually can kind of stop working. So that's my experience. Say it's part tonic, part medicinal. Do you have any experiences or opinions with external chi therapy? I would say the vast majority of the time, practitioners they don't actually have much chi or things of that nature. In the city where I live, there's a famous master who does Qigong healing, and it's pretty weak sauce, to be honest. Never been that impressed. But it is possible for someone to rock your world with these kinds of things and basically emit electricity, emit all types of strange things from their body. It is possible. It's just rare, and good luck finding someone and all these things, but it is possible. I know people that can do these things, but generally it's draining for the practitioner to use their own energy, And to get a one-way flow of energy is very high level and very difficult, and most people will never accomplish it. So within my school and circle of friends, we tend to call Reiki practitioners pathogen bags. Let that one sit in, because they think they're emitting all this energy, but actually they're just absorbing the other people's pathogens, and they just kind of carry it around. So we tend to call people who are energy workers in that way pathogen bags, because they're just pulling people's pathogens in, because they don't really understand energy dynamics and all these things. Let's see. Eco doomer stuff, which is why I read it. I guess he's into Western occult shit like Golden Dawn Druidism. Yeah, I don't think I've heard of him. I'm not really into any of those worlds, so I'm kind of boring in a lot of ways, actually. Honestly, a lot of the stuff that interests me lately is pretty mundane. Like I read an article recently about Michael Jordan. I bought this book called The Cost of These Dreams. I don't think I have it around here, but I think it's called The Cost of These Dreams, and it's basically this guy's profiles of really high grade or high ranking athletes like Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Pat Riley, a few other things, and just talking about their journey and what they have to become as human beings to achieve such heights. To me, that's really interesting. There's another book that came out recently about LeBron James and his business acumen and business acuity. To me, that's really interesting. What is the other book I read recently? I feel like there was another one that was kind of mundane. Oh, this dude, Ryan Serhant, I think that's his name, or Serhant, something like that. He has, I think, $1 million listings is like his reality show, which I've never watched. I just started watching his YouTube channel because he has really, really good videos on there. And I like his videos. I probably want to buy his book and read it just because it's an interesting study, both in the execution, like the actual content, but also his whole process about how he's marketing and branding himself. So honestly, a lot of the stuff that I read and listen to and consume is really mundane, just because I don't really require that stimulation I need, because I have my practice in these other things that I don't really fill up those spaces for me. Let's see. Any advice on how to remedy tinnitus? To me, I think tinnitus is actually adrenally related. So like adrenal fatigue, adrenal overstimulation, I think causes the ringing in the ears, but I don't know if anyone really knows. So I used to have it really bad, but over time it's actually gotten a lot less because I've chilled out and my adrenals are able to kind of calm down. So that's kind of, I don't know. Hopefully that's helpful, but I don't have anything really specific other than maybe like changing lifestyle pretty dramatically and lowering stress and anxiety, perhaps getting some acupuncture and getting on a specific formula. Would you be able to share a spiritual experience of your own? What do you mean by spiritual experience? First, like give me an example of what you mean by spiritual experience, and I'll see if I have had any experiences which match that description. Thoughts on global warming? I'm not really sure, to be quite honest. I don't really keep up with it because it's just like, you go on Facebook and then one post is, these polar ice caps are gone. And then the article below it is, the polar ice caps hasn't changed since 1977. And it's like, which is which? But obviously, I think there is probably climate change because the climate is always changing, because the nature of nature is that it's always changing. So obviously that does happen. To deny that is stupid and just doesn't make any sense. Obviously, the things we do might have an impact, but I'm not entirely sure that it is exactly what people say it is. But again, it's another one of these issues that oftentimes people are so emotionally driven and emotionally dominated that it's difficult to really even ascertain, a clear thread, let's say. Next question. Do you ever watch NBA? I don't watch anything recent, but it's like on YouTube, I'll watch old Michael Jordan games or like highlights of Kobe Bryant, like when he scored 81 points, or Kobe Bryant's last game, for example, his last game at the Lakers arena, the Coliseum, or I can't remember what it's called. It's not the Coliseum, it's something else. But his last game there, home game as a Laker, it's just insane. It's like out of a movie almost. Like watching some of his highlight reels, it just makes everything else seem boring because it's just doing crazy stuff. So I'll watch those type things. And honestly, my Instagram feed is like a lot of highlights like that, or even my YouTube channel. I just kind of enjoy anyone that operates at a high level in whatever they're doing. I like stuff like that, just to study it and observe it. Are you ever looking for writers for Hyperion content / copywriting? Occasionally, like I need some product copy written or something. So if you want to email me through the website, we can talk and you can send me some examples of your writing and I can see if it's a fit. But I have someone that's doing it for me, but they kind of dropped off the map and I haven't heard from them in like a week. So that's kind of a bummer. So maybe it is good timings. I do need a couple product copies written up. So you can send me an email from the website and we'll see. I've been thinking along the lines lately, it seems like you really have to narrow your focus and sacrifice some diversity to actually become accomplished to a significant degree. Yeah, I would say that is true to a large degree. People want to be good at everything, but they don't understand that it's kind of a misnomer. And my battery warning just came on, so I'm going to see if I can plug in my iPad and charge it. Let me see if this will work. Boom. It actually works. Able to get my iPad to charge while I'm using it. That's cool. Because otherwise it's going to die in a minute. I think I started with like 90%, now it's like 10. Yeah, you asked if I run and I said no, but I do the elliptical. And I probably will start running eventually, but I just couldn't for a couple years because I hurt my knees doing internal training and standing and stuff. But now they're a lot better and stronger and healthier, so I'll probably start running at some point, but now I just kind of do the elliptical. Let's see. Ever visit any hot springs in Oregon? I have not, but I've heard good things about Brightonbush, and which is more like it's more of like a either day or night destination. But there's a bunch of wild hot springs, I'm sure, that are less maintained, easier to access for free. But I don't really know. It's not really my area of expertise. Are you a fan of chess? Never got into it. But I like that show Billions, and at least in the first season, Chuck Rhodes, his emphasis on chess and his skill in chess comes up more, and it kind of comes into play in the plot. So that's my only real exposure. Plus, the book, The Art of Learning by, can't remember the guy's name, but it's called The Art of Learning, and it's basically the kid who the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer was based on. It's like a real guy who was a real prodigy. Josh Night Skin or Night Ski or something like that. I think that was his name, but it's just about learning and his approach to mastery. So that was interesting. Let's see. Profound realization in a short length of time. That's what you're defining as a spiritual experience. I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by profound. I know it might seem obtuse to keep asking, but profound realization about what in a short period of time? I'm sure my answer is going to be disappointing, but it's just like, what do you mean? What's profound to you? I guess. Definitely through training, you can have profound, or I don't know what you mean by profound, but you can have realization like all the time on a regular basis, about yourself, about your interrelationship between your mind and your body, interrelationship between your mind and your relationships, and all these things. Like, that can be profound. Experiencing chi as a real, solid, tangible thing, that's kind of profound, but honestly, at a certain point, it just becomes part of your experience, that it's not necessarily profound. It just becomes a bit normalized. So I don't really have anything grandiose or any high-level spiritual experiences yet, because I'm honestly not there. Or at least in my mind, what I would deem as those things. But perhaps perhaps feeling chi in a strong and tangible way, perhaps that's spiritual to some people. But to me, it's pretty mundane and normal. I mean, just earlier when I was talking about the Agarwood oil and my experience walking around, I'd say that was pretty interesting, like the way everything calmed down. And though just quietness, that seemed like when I went outside, everything felt really quiet. And I could hear just birds chirping and like a pin drop almost. So everything seemed really vivid and bright. So perhaps that's profound. I don't really know. I've lost track at this point. I don't really keep up or categorize my experiences that much. Probably a boring answer to that question, but let's see. Do you think the planet is overpopulated? I don't know how I would personally measure that, I think is what my answer is. I mean, sometimes I go to restaurants and they're too crowded and that's annoying, or I go to the grocery and there's too many people and the parking lot's full. That's annoying. But I don't know if the planet's overpopulated. I don't know what metric we would use to measure that or determine that type of thing. I guess it kind of just depends. And I had a question that came in on Facebook a few days ago that I said I would answer on the live chat. So let me make sure I answer that question. Let's see. Something about, oh yeah. So I was wondering if TCM, if there's anything about body morphology as related to the elements, is a similar vein to the doshas in the Ayurvedic system. To be honest, I think the doshas are kind of stupid. Meaning anyone I've ever heard talk about it in my life has never made any sense. I put it in the category of like astrology, where it's something people don't really understand, but they kind of just use it to justify nonsense. Because the thing is, what people are aware of is not actually who or what they are a lot of the time. They're just aware of trivial, mundane aspects of their acquired mind. So they might say, I am this type of person, or this is my constitution. But in reality, it's just what they're labeling or using as their basis for that claim is some distorted adaptive pattern that they acquired at some point in their life. But they're saying that's who and what they are, so that's their constitution, when it isn't. It isn't at all. It's literally just an adaptive acquired pattern that's probably dysfunctional and probably not helpful. That's all. It's not their dosha, it's not their element, it's not their constitution, it's not their morphology, it's just a dysfunction. That's all it is. So the problem is that people don't have a high degree of clarity or education. They haven't done decades of cultivation to develop their mental clarity or to develop or perhaps dissolve their acquired nature. So they don't really understand the medicine or what it means. And the other side of it is elemental type medicine, constitutional type medicine, was generally only useful in a racially non-homogeneous way. Like, let's say way back in the day in Korea, everyone in Korea was Korean, or everyone in Japan was Japanese. So constitutions, elements, all these things made a lot more sense because it was a pretty clear picture based on that. But now in, like, say in America or the modern world, for a lot of people, that's not the case. People are huge mix mash. People, they don't have, 20 generations or whatever of people living on the same land, in the same environment, eating the same food, having the same life. Those things just don't exist anymore. So a lot of those theories just aren't relevant because people they don't understand the complexity and the nuance. The way they understand it is like, oh, it's like astrology. Oh, it's like tarot. It's like whatever. No, it really isn't. So that's my answer to that question. Let's see. I just think things like the blood type diet or morphologies or these categorizations are not really accurate and not that useful. And usually just based on projections. And then you mentioned one of your previous live streams, the ridiculously huge gulf of difference between the Western understanding of self and the Eastern. But obviously those terms are very vague. Do you mean the entirety of Western thought and philosophy or just everyday teaching or everyday modern understanding? Can you elaborate a bit on the specifics of how each are different? No. Not really. It's too big and it's not really relevant because honestly, the fact that someone asked that question tells me that they can't hear what I'm saying. Because for many years, that's exactly what I've been talking about. I've been trying to get people to understand the differences and see things in different ways, in explicit and implicit ways. So if they haven't seen it already, then they're not going to see it if I explain it because they haven't seen it in years. And it's because oftentimes the Western thing is kind of two things that I'll say. First is the proof is in the pudding. Meaning, because this person also said, I think ancient philosophy is probably not well understood because we're not really sure what their worldview was regarding cosmology, health, etc. Which is true to a degree, depending on the philosopher we're talking about, but it's also blatantly untrue to a degree because the proof is in the pudding, meaning what we're doing today is based on their philosophy and their ideas, so we can see the results. Medicine is largely impotent. Our psychological approach needs a few thousand years of work. Our way of understanding the world and our relationship, all these things are very juvenile. But it's difficult to actually explain in a concrete way because we reach the element of the second point, which is with the Eastern traditions generally, it wasn't an abstract, purely scholarly pursuit. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes there was just your Confucian scholar, you're conscripted by the emperor, these types of things. There's that aspect, sure. But generally, there's this other side of it where if you're actually moving through a philosophical system, you're moving through it because you're internally changing. You're working through specific practices and methodologies along a specific linear pathway. So then your understanding of the philosophy changes because your internal landscape is changed. Whereas we don't have that in our cosmology, we don't have that in the modern world, we don't have that in our ancient Western philosophy. There's not it's kind of like a huge error that people have made in understanding Chinese texts. Like so many Chinese medicine people think like the the Huangdi Neijing is like the Bible, or it's like the guidebook for Chinese medicine, and it's just like, or people, the way they will translate the text is in a way which reflects the fact that they've been conditioned with this thing, this Germanic, Latin-based idea that somehow truth is codified and put in on a piece of paper, put in a book, and then passed down through generations. And it's just not true. It's just not the case, really. And it's just created so much confusion and nonsense, because with a lot of the Eastern stuff, it's living. And you kind of have to get it from someone who has it. If they don't have it, then you can't get it. And you have to get it from someone who's alive, who has it, and that's not a book. There may be a book involved, but the book is just an adjunct. The book is perhaps supportive or a prop. It's not really necessarily that essential, or it's just used to support a specific process, or to just shape your mind in a specific way. It's not like this is the truth, this is the gospel, like this is the Bible. It's just a huge error. But the problem is that people are so deeply conditioned in the other way that they can't understand the alternative, which is why oftentimes I won't go deep with people, because they literally can't understand what I'm saying, because they don't have a depth of experience in the alternative. They haven't spent a decade or more deconditioning themselves or moving themselves out of their pre-existing biases. They're still operating in some Western ideological, intellectual type thing. But they want to think that the Eastern stuff is like the same, and it isn't. It isn't at all. So that's why I don't get into it, and I probably never will, because it's a waste of time and energy on everyone's basis. So hopefully that answers that question to some degree, but you can't really start describing specific aspects of self, because the cavern is so large that it's just eventually becomes gibberish. Because it's what I was talking about earlier. What people try to do is understand new things. Oh, it's just like what I already know. Oh, it's just like what I already think. It's just like what I already believe. No, it isn't. That's just laziness or inexperience or ignorance or whatever. So anyways, next question. Do you dislike the term spiritual, or you just dislike that it is overused with a loss of meaning? Well, I think I don't really dislike the term. It's just no one knows what it means, really. And people mean a lot of different things. To me, it just comes down to honesty and clarity. Because I think I have 2 videos on YouTube. If you type in "what is spirituality" and then my name, you should come up. It should be on this channel. It's 2 videos where I basically explore, when people talk about, when they use that term, I broke down all of the different things that people generally mean. Either exclusively this thing or some combination of the like 5 to 8 things that I listed. Because it's this thing where people say it, but what do they actually mean? So if you know how to listen, you can see what they actually mean and what that whole picture is like, which people sometimes don't like. Like I had someone recently, actually, we were in conversation, and they're just like, oh, I think you're just like, you're limiting yourself because you just have that expectation, and it's not really what the situation was. It's just you're creating it because you're looking for it, and it's your expectation. And I'm like, that's just something people say when they're like stupid and uninformed. Like I understand what you're saying, but it's what I'm saying is correct. Because I could explain it and extrapolate it out and show you exactly the dynamics in that particular instance. Not saying across the board, not saying it's an ideology or a dogma or it's true in all situations. Of course not, because that would be ridiculous. But within the situation we're referring to, it is true. And sometimes people are just really afraid of those things, or they just, I don't know, they try to like wet blanket the the conversation. So it's not that I don't like the term, it's just that people oftentimes don't know what they mean when they say it. Or I've asked people, what do you mean? And they're like, it's whatever feels good. I'm like, no, that's hedonism. Okay, well then it's a sense of connection. No, that's community. Okay, it's working with my sexual energy. No, that's hedonism. It's being an abundant, divine, creative being. No, that's just, again, money. It's just your base desire. It's a connection with the divine. The fuck does that mean? Usually it's just a connection with an imaginary idea of something bigger than yourself. But that's not to say that there isn't something bigger than ourselves, because there obviously is. But to me, that's just common sense. That's just inherent to every human being, and it's not necessarily special. Because if it's true for everyone, then it's by default not special. Like, that's what I don't understand sometimes about people when they talk about these things. They're like, oh, it's kind of like everything is nothing and nothing is everything, and it's just universal oneness, and it's something that we all have inside of us, and it's all accessible to all of us. It's like, so then it's actually just completely mundane and ubiquitous, right? Like, so then it's not special based on your own definitions. Oh no, it's special. But wait, if everyone has it, and it's everything and nothing, and it's something and everything, then it's not special. Like, it just doesn't, oh, well, you know, spiritual stuff is just contradictory, and it's the nature of paradox, and it's just the world we live in. No, that's not true. That's just, you don't understand what you're saying or what you're talking about, and you're caught up in a lot of mental projections that don't really have substance. There's nothing wrong with it, because we need imagery, we need mythology, we need purpose, or we need things that are bigger than ourselves or outside of ourselves, of course. But that's just called being a functional human being. So if, you know, that's kind of why the term's annoying. Because my least favorite thing is, well, one of my least favorite things is just dishonesty in general, in inauthenticity. Even more distasteful to me is when people do those things, but then cover it with moral superiority or some fake spiritual agenda. Then it's just doubly, it's basically moral violence is what that is. Moral violence, I guess, is what it is. It's basically passive-aggressive nonsense. And it's one of my least favorite things to deal with, because you literally can't communicate with that person because they're 7 levels deep in illusion and delusion and nonsense. But they're not going to question it because they have all these barriers in place. And that's unfortunately a great chunk of the population is in that world. So that's another reason why it's a bit distasteful. So I would recommend just looking up that video that I did on what is spirituality, to where I just break it down and go through all the things that people are commonly associating with it. Another one is just chilling out and feeling good and relaxing. That's not spiritual. That's just chilling out, relaxing, and feeling good. Oh, why do you meditate and do yoga? It helps with my anxiety. It relaxes me. I feel more flexible. Okay. That's literally, it is exactly just what you said it is. It's nothing to do with prana or shakti. It's just literally what you said. So it's almost like, why are you annoyed by people that are dishonest and out of touch with their own experience, and their mind and their body are not at odds? Why are you annoyed by that? It's like, because it just is unpleasant to deal with as a human being. Because I feel like, as across the board, generally human beings like honesty, right? I mean, wouldn't you want to deal with someone who's honest and straightforward, and you feel like you have a clear understanding of who they are? You know who they are, you can trust them, you like them, they're solid and stable. I feel like that's kind of what we all like, but a lot of people in that world are the opposite of all of those qualities. And then they label those dysfunctional qualities as like virtuous or correct. And then it's just like, it's kind of gross, to be honest. Like, it makes my stomach hurt sometimes. Next question. How do we find authentic teachers in Qigong if we truly want to go the route without being misguided? Again, it's another one of those things you're going to have to figure out on your own. I mean, that's part of the reason why I made the course that I have on Udemy. So if you go to udemy.com, type in my name, you'll see Foundations of Qigong Theory. And I said explicitly in the beginning, this is to help you shape your mind, to be able to ask the right questions, to look for the right things, to be able to know if you have someone legit or authentic, or at least where they're at. Maybe they have a piece, or maybe they have something that you could gain that's beneficial. Because maybe you need some shitty teachers. Because if you don't have shitty teachers, you might not appreciate when you have a good one. So that's what I'd recommend, is check the course, do it, listen to everything, and that should help shape your mind in the more correct manner. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. So that's all the questions. Let me see if there's any more that I missed. Let's see. If there's no more questions, I'll probably wrap it up soon because it's coming up on like 3 hours. Let's see. No more questions, I'll probably drop out in a minute. I'm just like kind of scrolling through some of the other aspects, Facebook and whatnot. Make sure I posted it on here. I'm about to tune in and watch my own live stream just to make sure that didn't break. Weird. It's weird looking at my own live stream. It's on a bit of a delay. Watch this. How meta is that shit, man? Hold on, I can't wait till it shows me holding up the phone on the live stream. Man, how delayed is the live stream? I can't believe it's not showing up yet. Oh, here it is. Nice. Look how meta that is, man. It's me on the live stream holding up my phone. Holding up my phone on the live stream. It's coming up. Hold on. I can't believe it's so delayed though. Let me see. What was the other question? Yeah, there it is. Now we're getting the real effect. It's me holding up my phone on the live stream, watching me holding up my phone on the live stream, dude. Oh man, that's great. I can't believe it's so delayed, though. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, last couple of questions. Tell us about ATP and sea plankton and its effects on cognition specifically. No idea. Never really took sea plankton, never really got into it. So I don't know. I'm afraid I can't answer anything more than that. Do you worry about 5G frequencies, any possible negative effects on our health? Honestly, I haven't really been paying attention to that whole thing at all, but a lot of places have been stopping it. Like where I live, they stopped it and put a hold on it, so there's no towers being put in here. But it's cool that people are kind of waking up and asking questions, because there's probably a lot of information about EMFs coming out that's harmful. So, yeah, honestly, you just gotta take care of yourself and keep yourself strong so that you're not as affected by those things. Keep your immune system in check so your cells don't mutate as much, I guess. Let's see. I assume your chaga is complementary in respect to its pH jolt. My guess is metabolic waste is acidic, hence the partial benefit of endurance enhancement. I have no idea what you're talking about, to be honest. I don't know how the herbs will affect pH, but I would assume that in general, the medicinal mushrooms would be more on the alkaline side of things due to their bitter nature. bitter flavor profiles. It's basically mostly everything is like neutral or acidic. I'm harking back to my David Wolf days where it's like pretty much everything is neutral or acidic aside from like things that are bitter and herbal, which would be more alkaline, I guess. But chaga also has like a lot of antioxidants, anti-inflammatory properties, immune modulating, etc. Yep. So anyways, it's been almost 3 hours, so I'm gonna dip out and probably get some dinner and rest and relax and enjoy some of the sunlight because it's still sunny right now. So anyways, thanks for tuning in. Listen to me talk about new products, new teas that are coming, getting high on Agarwood. So I look forward to being able to share these with you guys. And once I get the teas more in stock and ready to go, I'll do another live stream about it and talk more in depth and detail. I'll talk about the Agarwood and these other things. Because for me, this stuff feels more emotional and more personal because I use them on a regular basis and it really has affected my life in a strong way and made me much happier. And I just want to share that with people, and so hopefully people will appreciate it and enjoy it in a similar way that I have, and it'll add a lot of value and benefit. So anyways, again, check out HyperionHerbs.com. Check out my courses on udemy.com. Type in my name, 2 courses on there. I have a lot of other courses planned to film and launch, and I have a bunch of videos that I need to film, but honestly lately I've been focused on kind of my own thing, and I haven't always had much time or energy to want to talk a lot, so I've just been kind of chilling. Hence why I haven't done videos in a couple weeks. But I'll be more regular and whatnot, and more engaged, do more live streams. So yeah, if you want to get the teas ahead of time before they're on the website or the Incense, just send me an email. I'll send you more info. I can send you an invoice and get them going because I've already shipped out some teas to people and people are loving it because it's incredible. But anyways, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all your support and for the good questions. And I'll see you on the next live stream. So enjoy your night.